Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? But can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Running Point. Anthony Hartwig with you, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. You can see their wonderful logo above both of our heads. Ty Bartel joining me as my co-pilot. Happy to have you on board, Ty. How are we doing today?
Doing real well today, Anthony. Just glad to be back here. Beautiful day. Looking forward for some fall sports, and we have some news too, I guess, on some other sports going on for the summer last night.
We got a fun show today. We got the NE8 football preview. We're going to break down every team in the NE8, their schedules, just like we did yesterday for the AAC. We have Jackson Milton volleyball coach Stephen Moore joining us at 1 o'clock to talk about the Blue Jays season. They finished second in the MVAC grade tier last season, so they're looking to take advantage of returning a lot of players and maybe crack that top spot this year. And then we also going to recap the Olympics from last night. And there's an interesting thing about maybe one of the reasons Oklahoma is joining the SEC, and it's got me and Ty kind of flabbergasted as one of the reasons that they kind of put out. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Comments are open on any social media platform that you are watching on, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, whatever your heart desires. Phone lines are also open. The MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning phone line, 330-886-0813. But before we get to football, we have to talk about baseball and the Astro Falcons being named champions last night because of a rainout. Co-champions with Puerto Rico. Let me just kind of recap what last night, the way it went for us at YSN. So we talked to Pletch on Running Point here, and we were excited about it. Power Hour talked to a couple of the players and Coach Billy McCartney. Then where we're getting ready, we're going to do a preview show at 8:30. The game was slated for 9 o'clock. We get a text from Billy Mack at like 7 that says, "It's storming here. We haven't gotten to the field yet, but we might not be playing on time." That's all we didn't know what time the game was still officially scheduled for 9. So we run our preview at 8:30 with DJ Yoakley and Steve Leslie, which was a phenomenal preview show if you weren't able to watch it. And then we get a text around maybe 8:45 that says the earliest we're going to play is 10:30, maybe 11 if we play at all. So now we're starting okay, we're getting ready for a late night. Get your popcorn, get your coffee. We're going to be playing baseball at 11 Eastern. Let's go. Then eventually, we got the update that the game was going to be postponed, but they're still up in the air what they were going to do for the championship and what they were going to do for who got the trophy and how they were going to decide that because of travel arrangements and the fact that both teams could not afford to stay a day after. They just decided to, hey, let's share the championship and name both Puerto Rico and the Youngstown Astros champions, and they did that. So we do want to congratulate the Astros on winning a championship, and we talked about it pre-show, Ty. Even though they didn't play that last game, you still feel like they solidified. They definitely earned that championship with the games that they played all weekend and the ability to win through the weekend and get to that game.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like that game the other night was really their championship game too, and it was nice too because now. And you know what? One guy I immediately thought of as soon as I saw the post too, and I got word that Youngstown was going to be co-champions. I immediately thought of Joe Roth and that whole family and that how much more that performance means now because it brought home hardware now on top of everything. I mean, yeah, it didn't in the end all be all. Originally, that wasn't what it was supposed to be for, but how much more important is that game now, not even knowing how much was on the line then, and he still came out and pitched a phenomenal game and brought some more hardware home to Youngstown, too. Baseball championships now, the state championship coming to Northeastern Ohio, and now the world championship coming to Northeastern Ohio. If that doesn't raise your eyebrows to the baseball talent here, I don't know what will.
My favorite picture that was posted last night was the one of both teams together with the championship banner, because that was one of the moments, like, isn't that at the end of the day what baseball is about? Like brotherhood and just the ultimate camaraderie that baseball kind of brings a little bit more than the other sports. And it almost felt like, the Little League World Series, their tagline is like, come together as a world, play baseball. They're always great sportsmanships. The kids get to make friends with people around the world. And that picture kind of installed that kind of theme to last night. They were all together. They were obviously having fun with each other. And I thought that picture was really cool of both the teams holding the banner and sharing that championship.
If I could get this working, yeah, that'd be great. No, yeah, absolutely. Those are just one of those moments too in sports where, and you see it a lot, I think, in high school sports more than any other sport, where the bare bones basics of sports and just the means of competition and the means of just respecting your opponent to the fullest, and just having a fun time at playing a game, honestly. And that's what you see too a lot more at the high school sports, because like we said, money usually murkies the waters a little bit, and you'll see that happening now in the college level and especially in the pro ranks. But at the high school level, it's really nice to just see a bunch of kids that just love playing the sport so much, that they have the highest level of respect for their opponent, that they could just go out there and have a great time with them, even if the whole world is watching them try to play this game.
Couldn't say enough about the coaches and the organization, and just super proud that they're able to bring home those rings that they get to show off for the rest of their lives. Nothing beats the rings, Ty.
Oh, no, nothing at all. And I mean, it's a memory, like you said, it's a memory to take for the rest of your life, and bring some more history back to Bobseen Park too. And I mean, that's going to carry some weight with it, because I mean, it's a team that came from there. And I mean, we already know how historical that field is and how much, how special of a place it holds in our hearts here at YSN. And just nice to see a team from out there able to go all the way with it.
Favorite social media post last night was from Pletch's Twitter, where he tweeted out a video of the coaches playing a virtual reality laser tag type game in the arcade. And if that's just not like the epitome of just having fun and letting your inner kid kind of shine out for a little bit, that was just really awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, in all end all be all, Coach Pletch has done a real good job of just having that team camaraderie between these guys. And I mean, this team is such a close knit group anyway. In the times that I've been able to see them, I mean, these are just a group of kids that have come from all over. But I mean, you wouldn't tell that by the way that they play with each other. You think that these kids have been friends their entire lives, with how they've been close and having each other's backs this entire way through. I mean, that's the one thing, is that team chemistry and that camaraderie between them is one of the strongest I've seen in the area.
And now that the Astro Falcons have a 10U, 9U kind of team, you can future teams, you can say these guys have been playing together almost their whole lives, and they've been playing on the same Astros team if they're able to stay with the program. So very excited for that future as well. So once again, we want to congratulate the Youngstown Astros for representing not just Ohio, not just our area, but really a little bit of our country. I know Puerto Rico is technically an American province, but it was a Puerto Rican team, not an American team, and we definitely love the fact that they went and represented our country a little bit with that class and with strong character. We congratulate them once again on the championship. So without further ado, let's get to the much anticipated. We got a lot of texts yesterday when we were doing the AAC about when's this team going to get profiled? When's this team going to get profiled? Well, you know what? We're doing one more conference today, and let's dive into the NE8 and what to expect from the football schedule in the NE8 this year, Ty.
Yep. And, what team do we want to start off with first, Anthony? Give me a team name, and we'll take a look
at
it.
let's talk. Let's start Poland. Poland was one of the teams that everyone's going to be getting a good look at week one because they're playing Canfield. So I think Poland, and they're kicking off the season on a Thursday. I think it would make abundant sense to kick off the previews with them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Poland is one of those teams too that they did what everyone I think just about expected them to do last year. They finished the year 5-1. That one loss coming against the South Range last year in that first game of the season. They ended up scoring 207 points. Get this, held opponents to just 58 points throughout 6 games last season. That is less than 10 points per game. They ended up winning 2 games in the playoffs before finally falling. So they were 2-1 in the playoffs. But Poland also a team, let me pull up what we have for their roster here and what I got for them. Poland has a few players that are going to be returning that are going to be very effective, I think, for this defense. The players to watch, I think, Dom Parker, defensive lineman, he's going to be returning as a senior. He was second team NE8 last year, as well as Christian Colosimo, the linebacker. He's going to be returning as a senior, also second team NE8 as well last year.
Can I just say that Christian Colosimo, second team last year. I think if I had to maybe pick a couple players that were going to be almost guaranteed to go from second to first team, Colosimo is going to be one of them. I've seen his offseason workouts on social media, and I've seen just the kid is just built. He's a rock. He's a train. He's whatever you want to call him at the linebacker position. You're running into him, and you're not going any further. So absolutely. I think he'll be one of the guys that goes from second to first team.
He's really one of those guys that just exemplifies Poland's defense, though, and what it's been for years to come. That hard-nosed, get the runners early, get in their face, rough and tough them defense. So that's going to be one guy I'm going to be watching. There was some players that Poland has lost, though, this year that I'm going to be questioning a little bit how they're going to be able to fill those holes, and I'm going to be curious to see what they do to fill those holes. So defensive players that lost, Brandon Eicher, the defensive lineman, Peyton Marakovich, linebacker, and Andrew Centofanti, a defensive back, as well as a couple offensive linemen and Nate Williams and Carter Killigren. We know, though, Anthony, that Poland, if there's one thing that they're great at producing, it's offensive linemen and defensive players, though.
That is just the epitome of truth. I don't think a truer statement has ever been rattled off. Poland's offensive line, especially, there are a couple of things that are sure in life. Life, death, and the fact that Poland is going to have a good offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a real quick peek too through this the Poland football schedule this year. So, as of course we know, we highlighted this yesterday. First game of the year is going to be that August 19th game. That's going to be versus Canfield at home. Next week they host Louisville. They go to Howland September 3rd, at Hubbard September 10th. South Range is at Poland September 17th.
That's a revenge game.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. 24th at Niles, October 1st at Girard, Lakeview October 8th, at Jefferson October 15th, and October 22nd versus Struthers at home. So I mean, right there, last 7 games they're closing it out with the NE8. They're playing 7 straight conference games, and those first 3 games that are non-conference, you got Canfield, which will be a good game, and Louisville might be another one that will surprise some people as a really good game as well.
Oh yeah, I don't think it shouldn't surprise people that's a upper division, Louisville Division 3, and they'll be coming off a game against Barberton in week 1. Barberton has multiple players on the NEO top 50 recruits list in the class of 2022. Barberton has like 3 or 4 guys on that list. So Barberton's a legit team, and Louisville's going to be coming off that Barberton game. And they're either going to be riding really high or they're going to be trying to look to wash that taste out of their mouth. Either way, that's a really tough non-conference game. And what we love about it is it's YSN versus YSN in the non-conference. We love to see it.
Absolutely, too. And we know with Louisville, they try to schedule up a lot of times, too, and they go for that stiffer competition, and they're not backing away from Poland this year.
I think Poland is the smallest team they play in Poland's Division 4. So, and then they have 4 or 5 Division 1 teams on that schedule.
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely a game where Poland throw divisions out the window at that point, because Poland has had a string of success up until this point, and their size alone can compete with some of the best up there, and then you can rough and tough with some of the best when you have the size Poland does. But next up on our docket, which one we want to look at next, Anthony?
Well, it was, when we highlight, did we highlight? We did highlight Poland's games, I guess, but I want to talk a little bit about that South Range game a little bit more before we move on.
Yeah, if we want to, let's go.
Because the last 2 years, the NE8 in football has come down to South Range Poland. Last year, the 2 years ago, Poland won that game. Now the last year, South Range won. It's kind of becoming one of the local rivalries, even though it's a brand new league, just their third season in football to be in the same conference. It's quickly becoming a very hot and heated rivalry on the football field between Poland and South Range, and that's going to be a game in Poland that they're going to be looking to kind of get revenge. And a lot of people, that might be the NEA championship in the middle of the season if both teams kind of take care of business in the first half.
I mean, it's probably the best time to have the game, too, is in the middle of the season. You don't have to worry about the early season rust, and you don't have to really worry as much about injuries with a week 5 game. So you're pretty much going to have these teams as close to full strength as you would hopefully assume, as close to full strength as possible by week 5. A September 17th game where rain might be an issue, but it's still going to be beautiful weather, a beautiful night for a Friday night game. And I mean, it's going to be a game that's going to be, like we said, rough and tough one, but it's going to be two completely different contrasting styles. But this is almost a perfect time for this game to be going on in the middle of September, in the middle of the season, right when we can probably see these teams both at full strength and see what each one has to offer.
I think it's really good to have this game in the middle, because if you have it in the beginning, as you said, you worry about both teams just kind of trying to shake off early season rust or trying to figure themselves out. But if you have it too late in the season, you're also worried about, are these teams really beat up by the time they get there, and are they at full capacity? I feel like at September 17th, that's the perfect week where you can say both teams should be at full strength, should be rolling on all cylinders, and that might equal the best matchup possible between these two powerhouses.
And not to mention, both of these teams in the 4 weeks prior are going to be well tested before meeting each other, as Poland has to face teams like Canfield and Louisville, and South Range is gearing up against Springfield week 1. So both of these teams are going to be going through a gauntlet of a schedule. But the nice thing is they're both going to see what each other has those first 4 weeks of the season. And then you have that game, and then you have 5 weeks to adjust, and maybe even down the road have to face this team again. But I mean, point is, you get to see them bright and early in the middle of the season, probably at their best, and then you have 5 weeks to kind of adjust from there and see what the other team did.
Another game that I don't think Poland can really sleep on is that they have to make the trip to Jefferson this year. And we saw last year that even though Jefferson record-wise struggled, games at Jefferson were a lot more competitive than games where Jefferson came to their area. That's a hard place to travel to play. For most teams, it's an hour drive up into Ashtabula County to play Jefferson in a conference game. It's a hard place to go and take care of business and play. And we saw a lot of teams go up there and, not play their best. And Jefferson's a team that could be very competitive if you don't go up there with your best. They were one play away from beating Hubbard at the goal line.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about sports, and especially football, it's a game of mental advantages, and you're going to take anyone that you can. And sometimes, man, when you're on an hour and a half, 2-hour car ride, and all you're thinking about is this opponent or is this game, sometimes you could psych yourself out too. If you have too much thinking time and not enough just, I got to go out there and play the game, right? And you have that time, that delay before the game where you're just sitting in a car, there's not much going on. You might be talking with teammates, but you're just thinking about the game. And sometimes that can turn out in the worst case scenario for some teams. And like I said, you could psych yourself out mentally. And it's definitely a game. Jefferson's definitely not a team you want to think you can go into Jefferson and just be a pushover game, because they're definitely a team that'll surprise a lot of teams if they try to come up in there thinking or having that type of attitude going into Jefferson.
Would be remiss if we didn't point out that Poland, multiple teams in the NE8, starting a new coaching tenure with Coach Pavlansky, and we've talked to him on Running Point in the weeks past, and he'll bring new fresh blood and maybe a little bit of a tweak to their scheme a little bit, and excited for a new era in Poland football as they join a handful of teams in the 88 that we're about to talk about, starting a new coaching tenure with their football programs. So very excited for Poland. I think that they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. They should be up there, and we'll see how it shakes out. But Poland, not expecting any kind of drop off from last year from the Bulldogs. So I think it's a perfect segue. We already talked about the South Range game, to just move down the list and talk about the Raiders down in Canfield.
Yeah, I mean, this was a team too that I think everyone felt had a disappointing ending, because they expected this team to be state champions last year with how well they played. And truthfully, they played well enough, I think, as well, to become state champions with that loss coming in the playoffs to Kirkland. But anyway, South Range 6-0 in the regular season, 251 points scored compared to just 96 points against. They won 3 straight in the playoffs before eventually losing to Kirkland in that one loss. So they finished the season 9-1 last year. As far as players to watch for South Range coming up this year, Michael Lally, the offensive lineman, and Jacob Brooks, offensive lineman, 2 senior offensive linemen. Lally, a first-team NE8 last year. Brooks, second-team NE8. Part of that really good offensive line that provided so much protection for the Raiders, as far as both behind center and for running back Dylan Dominguez, who is also a player to watch. Running back, senior this year. He was first-team NE8. He was something special and something fun to watch, though, Anthony.
Almost unstoppable. I mean, teams knew Dylan Dominguez was getting the ball, and it didn't matter. He was what we call a wrecking ball, where he would just pile through the line. It would look like it was a little pile up on the offensive line, and then all of a sudden here comes Dylan Dominguez just popping out of there, and he'd break what should be 1 to 2 yard runs into 6 or 7 yard runs. That was one of his trademarks. Definitely liable for the big runs, but he was also one of the guys, like I said, could turn short 2 yard runs into 6 or 7, which is just as important as being able to break it and go 30 or 40 yards down the field.
I think the returns of both Michael Lally and Jacob Brooks, 2 huge offensive linemen, is going to help Dylan Dominguez out tremendously this year, creating that space, creating those holes for him to really take advantage on opposing defenses on. And I think that's going to help out tremendously too, especially with the loss of their quarterback last year, Patron. He was the NE8 player of the year. We'll look at the offensive players loss as Michael Patron, NE8 player of the year, quarterback last year, no longer there. Luke Crumbatcher, wide receiver. Harley Novak, their kicker, as we know, she was a senior last year. And then Jake Gehring, their tight end as well. That's a pool of a lot of talented players, though, Anthony. But South Range has always been pretty unique of finding different ways to score year to year.
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, they lose Crumbacher, and he was very versatile in the receiver spot, but a lot of their skill position players coming back. The receiving core is still very game experienced, and obviously Dylan Dominguez. They're in a little bit of a quarterback controversy right now. They have 2 guys fighting in camp, and obviously official practices just started yesterday. So as the days go on, and they get a couple of scrimmages under their belt, I think the definition of who will be their week 1 quarterback might get a little bit more clear. But they have 2 guys that have a legitimate chance of winning that starting job come week 1, and Skurpak and Zins. So we're going to have to see who kind of steps forward in this month of August as we prepare for August 20th. They have a big game week 1 that they have to be sure on who their quarterback is for that week 1 matchup.
Absolutely. And not to mention, too, holding opponents under 20 points per game last year did South Range in the regular season.
And they return, I believe, 8 out of 11 of their defensive starters.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple of those that I want to highlight, Corey Pennick, the defensive back, he was first team NE8 last year, returning senior, as well as a returning junior, Bailey Ryan, defensive lineman. He was second team NE8 as a sophomore. You expect big things from him going into his junior year. He's looking for that first team honors this year.
Yeah, let's go, big boy. First team honors. Another guy, I mean, we talked about Colosimo with Poland. Another guy that is not hard to imagine making that jump into the first team slot of the NE8 postseason honors.
Yeah, and I mean, the one one notable guy that they did lose in Luke Blasco, the defensive lineman that made first team NE8 for South Range last year. You kind of are hoping that you can insert Bailey Ryan right into that spot and that he learned hopefully enough under Blasco coming in as a junior now. After making a second team NE8, he could kind of be reinserted into that role, and maybe, hopefully, if you are the Raiders, you don't miss a beat with Blasco as Bailey Ryan is taking over there.
That is one of the things that Coach Yeagley has very much been good at through his tenure at South Range, is taking guys and inserting them into a little bit of a bigger role the next year and watching them just blossom from role players to superstars. And that's something that he's kind of made a career of. And I don't expect anything less out of Coach Yeagley this year.
I mean, and we're going to look real quick through their South Range football schedule. And I mean, we'll just stop right there at week 1, because I don't think we could skip over week 1. South Range Springfield. It's a game that's been over a year in the making now, Anthony.
Really,
it's a game
like last year. Remember that there was that lull because both teams had a bye. There was that week where both teams were off. You don't know how many messages and how many comments that even we at YSN got on our posts about, we need to see South Range and Springfield play each other. This needs to happen. And of course, they're not gonna do that when they're preparing for the playoffs. It was one of those dreams and fantasies that sports fans had that wasn't gonna happen. But at the same time, last year everyone in their brothers wanted to see South Range versus Springfield and get that bragging rights and try to plant the flag on who the best team in the area was last year. And they played 2 years ago. Springfield won in overtime at South Range. But they've been a year off, and this rivalry getting a little bit renewed, and it's going to be a fun one come week 1. Springfield returns their quarterback and South Range doesn't. That's going to be a big talking point. Springfield knows Bo Brungard's coming, and he's our guy. And South Range, they'll know by then who their guy is, but right now, still up in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a game you kind of wish we did have last year instead, but it is a game that we are finally getting, and we're getting it bright and early in week 1 of the season. So we're finally going to get that Springfield South Range matchup, and hopefully it'll be a good game at Springfield too. So the New Middletown faithful will be pretty loud and rowdy.
Yesterday, you talked about when we were talking in Canfield, Poland, on how one of the teams might be liable to run a trick play in early in the game. Coach Guerrero has proven that he is not afraid of running trick plays at any point in the game. He might be the one that pulls something out of his pocket in the first quarter of that game to try to make a statement to the Raiders to say, we're going to, we're here to win no matter what. We're not taking this game as a tune-up for our conference. We're here to win. So I think Coach Guerrero might be that coach that pulls something out of the back of his pocket to pull a trick play on the Raiders in the first quarter.
I mean, very well possible, too. I mean, we've seen him do it a multitude of times last year, and we've seen him. I mean, it's paid off, too, because, I mean, this is a team that could score within 5 to 10 seconds. They could score in a singular play.
If you can run a trick play with 20 seconds left in a playoff game when you're down, then you'll do it at any time. I mean, the guts that takes and the cojones that takes, that proves to me that he is willing to do it at almost any time in a football game.
Coach Guerrero has proven time and time again, and he said time and time again he's fearless when it comes to coaching. Though I mean, he truly is coaching to what he believes is giving his team the best chance to win, and that's all you can ask for from your head coach. And more often than not, he does put them in the best chance to win, and he does that through various, like you said, trick plays, getting in the mind of his opponent. I mean, he does tremendous film work, and he gets those guys as well as Brungard, and we know those guys. We'll preview the MVAC a different day, but we already know how well they do things over there. But this is going to be a very tough game for South Range, but this is a huge statement win for either team, especially even just week 1 in the season. Yeah, you don't want to let that define your season, but that is going to give the winner a huge momentum boost going forward.
And that's just week 1. Let's go down the rest of the Raiders schedule and see what else they have in store. I know it's a very tough non-conference schedule. I think they go to University.
Yep. August 27th, they go to University, and then September 3rd, Canton Central Catholic, before starting into NE8 play. And that goes September 10th at Struthers, 17th at Poland, 24th versus Girard, October 1st at Niles, 8th versus Jefferson, 15th at Lakeview, and 22nd closing out the season at home versus Hubbard as Hubbard goes to South Range. But Canton Central Catholic's another game that's going to be a huge one for South Range, and that's week 3.
I think that's one where the guys on the team want to exercise some demons, because I'll tell you, South Range basketball and South Range baseball, their bugaboos for the last decade have been Canton Central Catholic. It doesn't matter, like every tournament run, no matter how promising the team looks, it always kind of runs into Canton Central Catholic. So I think there might be some revenge on the minds of the football players to kind of say, we can beat them at least on the football field, and give all of our multiple sport athletes some confidence that we can take care of Canton Central Catholic a little bit. We can show them that we are South Range and we're proud. And I think that's one of the games that the players might be the most amped for, because of the history with Canton Central Catholic and the other sports that they play.
And with them coming to South Range too, you want that stadium to be rowdy, and you expect it to be a packed house on a Friday night, because that is going to be a fantastic game, as you expect too. Two very good schools that have very great sports programs, a history of just having great sports programs, meeting up another time. And I mean, the history has already been written for them. So here's just another chapter in the book.
When you go into their NE8 schedule, very, very interesting. They closed out the season with Hubbard.
Yeah,
like that's going to be a tough one.
And I mean, they're going at Struthers, at Poland to start their NE8 schedule. Struthers again is a team that Struthers is one of those teams I really don't have a great read on, because I truly believe Struthers, I don't know where they're going to be falling, but they have so much potential that Struthers, I believe, can beat any team on any given day with the talent that they do have. It's just, can they put it all together? But we know that Poland game coming up the week after the Struthers game, maybe that's a game too where South Range, if you're looking ahead too far, you might get surprised by Struthers too. So
yes.
This is not a game where you want to be looking ahead to Poland. South Range needs to be in the moment, looking game to game each week.
And the thing is, I don't think South Range looks over any opponent in the NE8, because the deal is everyone except Girard and Jefferson. No, everything except everyone except Jefferson is at least a division above them. So I mean, I think they've come into this league with that chip on their shoulder, like we're the smallest team in the league. I feel like there's never a game where they don't feel like they're the underdog, even though they won the NE8 last year and they did so amazing in the year before in the NE8. I don't think South Range has gotten to the point yet where they feel like they're established favorites when they walk into a Struthers or a Hubbard or a Jefferson or a Girard, these big high profile programs that have been successful for years and that are also divisions above them. I feel like they still have that chip on their shoulder when they go into those games, trying to prove that they are an established program and it's not a fluke that they can compete with the bigger schools in the area.
Well, all the credit goes to Coach Yeagley, too, for that. I mean, does a tremendous job over there coaching and getting his guys ready game to game each week. As far as those schedules are concerned, he does a great job of not really allowing teams to play down to their opponents. Very reminiscent. I mean, we already mentioned him earlier, though, but Coach Guerrero of Springfield does a very similar thing. You never feel like the opponent is being disrespected when South Range and Springfield are playing them. And, you talk about that too. And we talk about the Struthers game, and it is easy. And that's, that's why you bring it up. It is easy to look ahead to opponents. And the point you bring up too, though, Anthony, is a great point, because South Range has been traditionally, and especially in the last few years, really, really good about staying consistent. And that's very, very hard to do in football, but they've done a great job of staying consistent. And I think all the credit has to go to Coach Yeagley for his tenure there at South Range and all the success he's had.
We will take a quick timeout on Running Point. We'll come back, preview Hubbard and Girard, and get ready for Jackson Milton volleyball coach Stephen Moore joining us at 1:00. Don't go anywhere on the Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet on ysnlive.com.
At Greenwood Chevrolet, shop with confidence, knowing we're ready to go the extra mile for you. With the largest selection of used vehicles in the Valley, backed by the Greenwood Advantage Warranty. Only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
New things happen all day. Some are good, some not so good. In today's complicated world, while you're busy working, playing, and living life, we're busy helping you make sense of the day's news. And there's only one place where it comes together with clarity, context, and accountability. It's 21 News at 6 with me, Madison Tromler, and Dick Steyer.
21 News at 6. It's what the day's news really means to you.
Welcome home to a home made homier with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. Inspiration starts at BairdBrothers.com and is turned into reality when high-quality hardwoods are delivered right to your home. Baird Brothers has the latest design trends, shiplap and skinny lap interior siding, antique oak rustic flooring, and, well, you'll find them all at BairdBrothers.com. Ordered easily, delivered conveniently, enjoyed comfortably. BairdBrothers.com.
WRS Wealth Advisors, the area's premier wealth and retirement specialists. Located on South Avenue in Boardman.
Hi, this is Jim Myers with Myers Family Insurance, your local Medicare and retirement resource. We're excited to have sports back. Whether you're on the field or cheering from the stands, sports unifies communities and brings hope for the future. We're all one team working together. At Myers Family Insurance, we know the importance of a great team.
Our team continues to grow to help you with your Medicare and retirement needs.
The annual election period is October 15th through December 7th. Now's the time to make sure your plan continues to meet your needs for the upcoming year.
Call today.
Hi, I'm Colin Chupa. And I'm Kelsey Clem from K-Squared Marketing. Our boutique marketing firm specializes in media planning and buying, public relations, event marketing strategies, and strategic sponsorships. We can integrate our services with your existing game plan, or we can be your entire marketing team. Your goals, our game plan. Let's win together. Call K-Squared Marketing at 330-623-2730 or visit ksquared.marketing to learn more.
Welcome back to a Tuesday edition of Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Anthony Hartwig with you alongside Ty Bartell. As we heard from Greenwood Chevrolet in that break, if you're in the market for a newer used car, head over to Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown, and they will take better care of you than anyone in the area. MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline open, 330-886-0813. We'd love to hear from you. Also want to remind you that the comment section is also live, no matter what platform you are watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Comment and we'll bring you up, and we'd love to hear from everyone out there that is watching today. So we previewed Poland and South Range before the break, and South Range closes the season with Hubbard, and we transition right into the preview of the Hubbard Eagles, another team that is returning an all-star running back in TC Coffee, Ty, and really excited for the Hubbard running game and what they can bring to the table. Ty is muted at the moment.
Go.
There we go.
There we go. We got it. Yeah, but TC Caffey, I'm sorry, was running back last year for Hubbard, 1,170 yards, 12 touchdowns last year as a junior, returning as a senior. And the big thing to watch, too, for Hubbard is both Alex Goodrick and Mike Zapka, two offensive linemen. Goodrick, a first-team NE8 last year. Zapka, second-team NE8 last year. Two huge offensive linemen that are going to do nothing but help Caffey going into this year. And you see Romo there. They both Anthony Romo and Jamie Thompson have the honor of watching TC Caffey. He looks like he's going to have a monster year this year, Anthony. Already a huge year last year in his junior year. Expect bigger things from him this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, how do you one up a year that he had? But if anyone can do it, it's definitely TC. I think we came up with a bunch of names to what TC stands for, and as the season went on, it got bigger and bigger. So we might have to come up with some new nicknames this year.
He's definitely going to be entertaining to watch, and I think he's going to be part of a resurgent Hubbard offense this year. And I think you're going to see the Hubbard Eagles play a lot better offensively. They plateaued out towards the end of the season. I think they were trying to find their identity after the team started adjusting to them a little bit. I think they're going to come in with a better game plan too. And they have, I think, one of the top three, if not the best running back in the area right now.
You know what really hurt them last year, and Romo can correct me if I'm wrong, but trying to remember last year, they had a lot of turnovers in bad situations, and that comes from a little bit of inexperience, and they did have turnover issues, and I expect that to be that's an easy fix. You almost kind of got to regather yourselves in the off season and work on ball control and trying to make sure that you're not coughing up the football in big situations.
Yep. Brant Borowick is their one defensive player. They lost a defensive back that was first team NE8 last year, but they are returning Nick Bowser, a defensive lineman that was first team NE8 last year. This is a team that has a lot of returns coming in last year. And like you said, Anthony, a little bit of inexperience last year. This was a very young team, but that is part of the reason why I expect them to make a big jump from 2020 to 2021 this year.
And Bowser's even bigger than Mario's arch enemy. I mean, he's a big, just... You do not want to deal with him on Hubbard's defense, and if he had a gift for I know when he makes big plays on YSN Social, I use the Bowser gift for him. So definitely expect big things from him and the Hubbard defense, returning quite a bit. A lot of experience on that Hubbard defense. They're going to be hard to score on.
Yep. And looking at their schedule, just like the other NE8 teams, the first 3 games are non-conference before they go into 7 straight NE8 games. So the non-conference games, August 20th is going to be at home versus Norwayne. August 27th, they have Cardinal Mooney come and visit them at home. And then September 3rd is Shaw visiting at home before they start their NE8 play, which is September 10th at home versus Poland, 17th at Struthers, 24th at home versus Jefferson, October 1st at Lakeview, October 8th versus Girard, October 15th at Niles, and October 22nd at South Range. So one of those teams with only 4 away games this year. There's been a few teams like that that we noticed that have less away games and more home games and vice versa. This is one of those teams that it looks like they have 6 games scheduled at home on the docket right now, and you got to figure that's going to play some sort of advantage for them. But one game I'm really looking at is that August 27th game against Cardinal Mooney. And I think that's a game between 2 teams, Anthony, that are going to be looking to have bounce back years, kind of disappointed with how they were last year, but had a lot of things to look up to, a lot of pieces, a lot of players that they can build around. I think this is going to be a very great early season matchup between 2 teams that are going to be on the up and up.
So some more gems from Anthony Romo, who will be calling games for Hubbard this year as the voice of the Eagles and one of the treasured announcers here at YSN. And man, Romo's right on the dot. Like, you go through growing pains one year, but it could be a blessing in disguise come the year after when you have to go through those growing pains and you get that experience.
Well, it also has to be so easy for a quarterback to try to be incorporated into that system when you have such an effective runner behind center, or behind you, I should say, excuse me. But you have such an effective running back that you could just hand the ball off to 20, 25, 30 times a game that you know is going to flow and create this dynamic offense. All you need to do is just be able to, pick your spots, hit your spots. And I mean, this can be a very effective team because the offense, there's not a whole lot of work that needs to be done there. It's pretty much figured out what they need to do with offense. Defensively, I mean, like we said, too, there are a lot of young pieces that are returning. They just need to figure out a scheme. But like Romo said, it's just those situational things. And if half of those situational things go in Hubbard's way this year as opposed to last year, you're probably looking at a much better record going into this year. So, I mean, I think maybe that's the goal for Hubbard this year is just look to limit those turnovers and look to put yourself and come out as winners in those big situations in games.
Yeah, and look at that non-conference schedule. It feels like this is an overarching theme in the NE8. Schedule tough in those first 3 weeks and make sure we are ready to go come conference time. I mean, you look at opening with Norwayne, who was a deep playoff run last year. Then you have Cardinal Mooney, who is just, everyone knows what Cardinal Mooney brings to the table. And then you have Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 3.
Shaw had a pretty decent run too, last year.
Legitimate deep playoff runs, programs that you're putting on your schedule. And I think it's safe to say come week 4 when the NE8 schedule starts, Hubbard's going to know exactly what they're made of.
I think the NE8 right now is just trying to establish dominance and say, if you want to play with the big boys in a big boy conference, you come to the NE8 right now, because it seems like every single team there, no matter of what their record was last year, no matter of where their team situation is or talent wise or where they feel like they are scheduling up, and they're scheduling as high up as they can for their non-conference games, and good on them too. I mean, great competition breeds great athletes.
One of the conference games I'm really looking for Hubbard is Girard, because Girard is completely opposite of Hubbard in the offenses they run. Girard likes to spread the ball out. We'll talk a little bit more about the Indians later in the program, but man, do they really enjoy just the running gun, the athletes on the outside, Nick Bolino coming back, and man, they are just opposite. Hubbard likes to run, ball control, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and Girard wants to score quickly. And anytime two teams are coming in with opposite styles, all going to be about who controls the tempo. We talked about it last week with, yesterday. Yesterday with the Canfield Bowling game. Two opposite styles. Who's going to control the tempo? And that's going to be, out of all of the NE8 matchups, I think Girard on Hubbard's schedule, Girard is the most unlike them as far as offensive schemes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that pool of 3 teams of Hubbard, Girard, and Struthers are really 3 teams I'm waiting, because I feel one of those 3 teams makes a jump and is significantly better than last year. All 3 teams kind of hovered around the 500 mark win-loss record. They were good teams. They can be great teams. They can make that next step too. And being one of those teams, Hubbard that's going to be a great game, because Girard, like you said, has that contrasting style. So it's going to be a game where these teams have to think outside of the box a little bit to beat their opponents, because they're going to see something completely different coming from the other side of the ball. And it's going to be a game too towards the end of the season that's going to be interesting.
That being said, the Struthers game and the Girard game might be very important towards the NE8 standings. If those 3 teams are hovering in the top of the pack, those are the games that you have to really win to separate yourselves from the top to the bottom. So for Hubbard, Struthers and Girard could be the 2 really important games to keep themselves set up for a run at the top of the NE8.
And not to mention, too, 16 teams making the playoffs. So winning those, being around 500, those 6-7 wins might be all you really need to get those playoff seeds, which I think will be enough. If you get 6-7 wins, you should get a playoff seed. But I mean, hey, one of these teams could be vying for that 6th win against each other to make the playoffs, and that might be just the game that does it for them. So it's going to be great competition, I think, right in the middle of that NE8.
And for Hubbard, the higher in division you go, the smaller that window gets on the teams that, the records that can make the playoffs in Division 3. That region is absolutely legitimate. So Hubbard's got to try to win every game they can, because unlike some other divisions, but down low in Division 6 or 7, I don't think 5-5 or 4-6 might not cut it in a 16-team playoff.
Exactly, and that's the interesting thing, and that's the beautiful thing about this, because they're NE8, you're competing against each other in conference, but you're also competing in your own separate divisions, and you also have your own agendas that you need to worry about, and your own teams that you need to worry about winning and losing against. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a great point too that you made. That Hubbard being a higher division, you're gonna have to really bring it against some of these lower division teams, and you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat week to week.
So we talked about that Girard game. Perfect segue to start to preview the Indians this year, and a team that Ty and me both believe can make a solid jump from last year to this year. Let's talk a little bit more about the Girard Indians, what they have coming back, and what their schedule looks like.
Well, the one player that I think is going to have a great season, he's going into his senior year, Dominic Melito, the wide receiver last year, 729 yards, half a dozen touchdowns in the year. I mean, just had a solid, productive year in his junior year, coming back as a senior, going to have 10 games regular season under his belt. You expect him to really take what he did in that 2020 season and expand on it and do even greater things. I wouldn't be hard-pressed to expect 1,000 yards from him this year.
That's a name that the Girard opponents are just sick of hearing, is Melito. Melito. His older brother Nick just ran just like he did, and they're both extremely fast, extremely athletic. He's going to be circled on everybody's scouting report. So I think one of the important things for Girard's offense is, they know it's coming. 1, can they find creative ways to get Melito the ball still? And 2, who are going to be some of the second guys to step up and make defenses take pressure off of Melito?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fantastic question going forward because, again, Girard, a very young team. The other returner that is going to be significant, first team NE8 offensive lineman, then Nassim Lloyd. He's coming back for his senior year. The only notable guy that I have defensively that they lost was Andrew Del Garbino, the linebacker who was second team NE8, and they are returning Nick Bengala, a defensive back who was second team NE8 last year. But like we said, this is a team that was returning a lot of guys, maybe not a lot of guys that had honors last year, first team or second team honors, but that might be just where Girard likes it, flying underneath the radar, having a lot of guys that have talent that might be ready to make that next step and get that second team or that first team honors this year. I think Girard is in that prime position where they can do so. They have some pieces on the offensive line. They have a weapon in Melito that they can target now. This is a team that I think can surprise some people this year, and I think they're doing what they like right now is flying under the radar. Up
front, Girard looks absolutely solid. They're going to be putting people in places in the back of their secondary, and that's something that a lot of high school teams deal with is the youth and secondary. I think if they can be sure up front, then they can cushion that secondary a little bit, and Girard might have one of the top rated fronts in the NE8 when you talk about their line and their linebackers core.
Looking through the Girard Indians schedule, again, first three games non-conference. August 20th, they're opening up at home versus Streetsboro. 27th at Liberty. September 3rd versus Ellett at home. September 10th versus Jefferson at home. 17th, Lakeview at home. 24th, they go to visit South Range. October 1st, Poland at home. 8th at Hubbard. 15th at Struthers, and 22nd, Niles at home. Another team that only has 4 away games, 6 home games, but that opener against Streetsboro, we know what Canfield and Streetsboro did to each other in the playoffs last year. This is going to be a tough game for Girard because Streetsboro, not only big, like you said, size-wise, but like Howland, a huge roster as well.
Yeah, and Streetsboro is got that swagger, the attitude too. They come into games, they don't care if they hurt you a little bit, Not saying not on the dirty side, but they have that almost mean attitude where they're just gonna do whatever it takes to win, and that makes them so dangerous. That's why we saw that game in Canfield, what they did to each other. It was just like two teams that could not get away from that mentality a little bit. So Girard's got a really tough week 1 opponent that they're gonna have to not just focus on winning, but also focus on staying healthy.
Yeah, and I mean, another 2-week stretch that I'm really looking at. We talked about those 3 teams, right? Hubbard, Struthers, and Girard being those teams that you really got to watch out for. And in the middle of that NE8 this year that could really make some noise. October 8th at Hubbard, October 15th at Struthers. That is week 8 and week 9, respectively. That is huge games to end their season right there, and both of them being away as well.
Ty, Chris Sigler bringing up a very interesting point that we could see every team in the NE8 make the playoffs because they have teams in multiple divisions. Man, that would be something if the entire league and with everyone they play, I mean they're playing up divisions other than Hubbard being Division 3. Everyone else is at least 4, I think. So teams that could really benefit from even a 500 NE8 schedule making the playoffs in a division where they are lower than the rest of the league.
Yeah, and like we did highlight, Hubbard's probably the one that they're going to need to make sure that they get their wins and beat the teams that they're supposed to throughout the season. But yeah, and it might not happen this year. There were some teams that were struggling this year. I don't know if they'll make that big of a jump. We'll see, though, because, I mean, that's a beautiful thing, too. Last year, you can't really take everything with a grain of salt last year because teams were dealt different hands. Practices were all out of whack. Opponents were all out of whack. So you take last year with a grain of salt. But this is definitely a conference, too. And if they continue to do the 16-team playoffs, I could definitely see, maybe not this year, but I could definitely see a year in the future where the entire NE8 does make the playoffs because there's a lot of talent in just the schools that are congregated in the NE8.
I'm going to make a bold prediction right now on Running Point and say that this year, every team in the NE8 goes to the playoffs.
You heard it here first. Anthony Hartwig calling it here first.
I'm buying into even the teams that struggled last year. They got both Jefferson and Lakeview both have new coaches bringing in new blood. They're both returning a lot. I feel like they'll make steps enough to make a 16 seed playoffs. So
I think you're right, Anthony, and I think you'll see a lot of those teams that struggled. I don't think you'll see the same struggles happen with a lot of teams, and that's just not the NE8. That's all across the state.
Look, the NE8's going to beat each other up. It's going to be like the SEC in football. They're going to beat each other up, but that might benefit some people because it might take down some other people too. That you can beat some teams and you can pull off some wins. I think it's very, very possible. I'm not, because I feel like saying it's possible means that it could happen, of course. I think when you say it's very possible, that means it's maybe like higher than 50% chance it'll happen.
I'll give it that. I said 1 year. 1 year. So, I mean, you want to give me – I'll take the higher than 50% on going on 2022 until the rest of eternity for the 1 year that the NE8 will all make the playoffs. I'll take my over 50% bet on that. But no, I do think it will be interesting though, because you do bring up a fantastic point that these teams are going to be beating up on each other. And we previewed the AAC last year, or yesterday, I should say AAC yesterday. Let's correct that. But we previewed them yesterday and we noticed that they don't really play each other, all the AAC teams, all the other opponents, where this one, you play everyone that's in the NE8. You are playing every single other team to close out the season. You play 3 non-conference and the rest in conference games. And you're right. Those teams that we're expecting to be around the middle too, they're going to be beating each other up. So there's going to be extra wins, extra losses, and you're going to be rooting for other teams in your division to help you out in certain situations as well.
Real quick, let's go back through that Girard schedule and pick maybe 2 or 3 games that we might be looking at. I think the last 3 are going to be really important for them when they close out the season. Struthers, I believe Struthers, Hubbard, Niles in the last 3.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun watching Streetsboro come into Girard the beginning of the season, but my 2 games were that October 8th and that October 15th game. You go at Hubbard, at Struthers. October 22nd, you close it out at home versus Niles, but those 2 games being away to both Hubbard and Struthers, those are 2 teams that I believe are going to be 2 teams that are going to stand in your way, 2 teams that you're going to be fighting with playoff spot-wise. You got to go away on the road. I think you need to take at least one of these 2 road games to put yourself in a really good spot for the playoffs.
We will take a quick timeout. We'll shift from football to volleyball next, as we have Stephen Moore from Jackson Milton Volleyball, head coach, coming on next on Running Point. Don't go anywhere on ysnlive.com.
Every customer has a story, and at Greenwood Chevrolet, we are committed to making sure it ends with you in the right vehicle. I get to be part of somebody's adventure, whether it's buying a car for the first time, helping them get approved, or finding the perfect car for their budget. I'm proud that people trust me with their finances. They trust me to take care of them, and they trust me with their story. I'm Tracy, and I'm ready to go the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Quality, customer service, and integrity. Those are the 4 words that have driven our success since 1957 at Joe Dickey Electric.
Joe Dickey Electric is one Mahoning Valley landmark business that stays current with the requirements of our customers. Family owned and managed, we are an electrical contractor and energy solutions provider. Every member of our team adds to his or her skill set through ongoing training. Residential, commercial, industrial, automotive, and more. We keep ahead of the needs of our customers with a fleet of more than 50 vehicles and 24/7 emergency service, so you're never left in the dark.
Jimmy Sutton here, Director of Isle, Purple Cat, and Golden String. We are happy to support YSN and 2 of my favorite people, Scotty Mincher and Super Dave O'Malley. We are an agency that provides services for adults with disabilities. We infuse humor, passion, and joy into their lives. If you know of any folks with disabilities that need our assistance, please contact us.
Your teams work hard and give it all they've got. Well, so does ours, because 21 Sports and YSN give you extra effort when covering local sports. 21 Sports and YSN, winning coverage of our Valley's teams.
Welcome back to Running Point on YSNlive.com, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. And we are going to be joined by the new head coach at Jackson Milton for their volleyball program, Stephen Morris. Coach, thank you so much for joining us on Running Point today.
Thanks for having me.
Got to be an exciting time in Jackson Milton. Last year, you guys finished the season at 17-6, second in the MVAC tier. What kind of things excite you about taking over this program that has a lot looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm really excited. We are going to be in the hunt. That's my goal, is to get us back to number one. I think Sue Prosy did a fantastic job for almost the last 20 years. So it's a little bit of disconcerting for me to take over such a legendary program like this. A little bit of pressure on me, but I think we're going to handle it pretty well. I got 10 returning lettermen that had experience last year, so really excited to get in the gym. When we started, I had nerves, getting back into coaching. I've taken some time off for deal with some family things, and I get the goosebumps. Can't wait till the first game to go, and I hope the girls are excited too.
Talk to me a little bit, Coach. Every coach, when you start a new program and you go into a program, it's about building that culture. Talk to me a little bit about the culture you're looking to build with Jackson Milton and what you're looking to implement there that's going to be a little bit different than what we saw in years prior.
Speed, picking with the speed of the game. I think, when you've been a coach or, had a coach that long, to get comfortable in doing it and forcing them to pick up the speed of the volleyball. We're always equating to, hey, watch the Olympics. There's a beach volleyball team that was known to go in two. We're going to try to incorporate some of that in our offense and be stronger and faster. We're still in the Olympic motto, higher, faster, stronger. And together, is the thing they added, and that's what we're instilling this year.
You return a lot of your offense from last year, a lot of the big kill getters from last year's team. Talk about some of the offensive leaders in that fast offense that you want to run that you're looking to step up this year.
Yeah, we got our setter coming back. She was a sophomore last year, so she had a year of growth, and she's looking really good so far. Mia Greco, I think she played outside for him last year. We're moving her to middle. She had a little JO experience playing middle, and like I said, playing against each other right now, she looks really phenomenal. We have Kylie Wilson on the outside. Kara Costello played some middle last year. We have Kaylee Davis, is on the outside. Trying to remember some of these. You got so many returning letterwomen that are great powers for us. So it's a good problem to have. So many good players that I can toss in there at any moment.
I know you started your first official week of practice yesterday, and you're getting them in, and I'm sure tryouts are well on their way. What things are you looking for when you're kind of building this roster and trying to solidify it?
We're looking for, hustle. I always say, make an aggressive mistake. I love someone that goes after the ball, understanding the offense. Luckily, for the last 2 weeks, we're able to go hardcore and get a lot of things set in. The basic skills, we always harp on them that you can't do any of the fun play stuff unless you can pass. And you got to keep the serve when we have it. So we're looking at girls that can actually pass, so we can get that run that offense like we want to, and be able to keep the serve and serve well.
If you're looking to make a deep run this year, having a successful season, talk to me and talk to some of the fans that may not know a lot about the program, may not know a lot about volleyball. Talk to me a little bit about some of the opponents that are going to be standing in your way this year.
You know what? I haven't even looked that far ahead yet. I know I'm looking like, conference. I know some people, I know that, in the last couple of years, and just previous coaching experience, when we get out of, the district's kind of easy because we're used to seeing everybody play. When you get to the regional play, we get start 6'3" girls, which, not too many programs have around here. I can't develop height, but we can develop, different mixed blocking schemes, different rotational perimeter defense to try to get, take away some of their big hitters and be ready to pass. So I haven't really looked down that far. I'm more focused right now on, taking that MVAC title and getting into the districts. And then when we get into districts, I'll start looking beyond that.
When you are coming in as a new coach, obviously building a staff is so important. Talk a little bit about the coaches that are going to be helping you along the way.
Yeah. Luckily, I was Linda Craig stayed on. She was a JV coach. She's coming back with almost 30 some years experience. So she has familiarity with how things at Jackson Milton run. We brought in 2 new junior high coaches, and one with multiple years of experience that's coming new and is a new teacher in the district. And we hired a teacher that wanted coaching experience for years, and we offered the opportunity. And so we're really focused on that junior high program because that's going to build the future for us down the road.
Talk to me a little bit, Coach, of what made you initially get into coaching and kind of what to expect, and highlight some of your favorite aspects of coaching.
Oh, what got me into coaching was just I taught as a teacher, so I look at it as more as teaching the sport. I got in coaching volleyball when I was at Youngstown Ursuline. They needed a volleyball coach, and I was looking at a coach, and I got an opportunity to do there. Had some success. Left there and actually had the opportunity to go to Austintown Fitch as the JV coach. Spent 2 years there before taking over the program. And I love the excitement of volleyball. It's a very fast-paced game. There's so many exciting things. And I try to build that in the passion and bring that to the girls. Things that you could look forward to. I mean, just watch the Olympics and how exciting it is, even if you just watch beach volleyball. And I think, coming out of the Olympics, hopefully we can get more fans to come see the high school volleyball.
As a new coach, you can look at film all you want and see who you have returning and what kind of offense they ran last year, but really hard to tell the personalities and who you're going to lean on to be leaders and things like that. How has it been this summer trying to kind of gauge the personalities and just kind of connect with this new team?
We've thrown a lot of challenges at them, and seeing which ones can accept the challenge and which ones are going to kind of draw it back. I call it like he wants to jump in the box. We've literally played in a 30 by 30 box, and you got to be ready to go. You got to function as an entire unit, getting 6 girls out there doing all the same thing at once. And when that one person's not doing one thing, it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. So far, we've done good in terms of challenging them. We got a group of 7, 8 girls that I'm going to lean on a lot, and hopefully we have success with them.
We talked to Jody Bartlett, who is the Fitch coach now, about the Fitch culture, and I'm sure you had a lot to do with building the Fitch culture in volleyball and how strong it is. What kind of things go into making volleyball so important in a community and so important into a school district? And I'm sure you want to bring that to Jackson Milton.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at Austintown, we noticed that regionals, when we go to all these JO, because I was a JO coach too, when we go out to Uniontown Lake, they would start with kindergartens, teaching them how to do volleyball and stuff like that. It was, that was unheard around here. And so what we did is start a little Spikers program at Austintown. We brought 2nd and 3rd graders and 4th and 5th graders come in and taught them the game of volleyball. I'm hoping to bring that to Jackson Milton so we can get them young. They do it with basketball, but for some reason we don't do it with volleyball. And that just, it disheartens it. And then, some of these kids don't have those skills. And volleyball involves some skills. Sometimes it's just like basketball. So hopefully we can bring that, the little Spikers program here to Jackson Milton and get some, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders excited about that.
What excites you so much about the Jackson Milton community and starting to be a part of it and starting to see the support that you do get behind you in these now full capacity, knock on wood, gyms that you're going to get?
Yeah. You know what? I always talk about Jackson Milton because I have 3 kids that actually go out here, and it has a private school atmosphere. It's small. You get to know the kids. You get to know families. You get to see, brothers and sisters, come through. And you get to know the parents very well. And I just like that small school atmosphere that, hopefully we bring a big time show to them.
We talked a little bit about this. You brought it up earlier and trying to compete with teams outside of this area. Every time we run into a team from Massillon or Canton, it feels like they're just running faster volleyball and they're taller. What kind of things do you think the area in general can do to better their volleyball and get to a point where we can say we have legitimate chances to compete in regionals against teams from Canton and Massillon?
I think what we have to do is start getting some Canton and Massillon, teams on our schedule. I know the travel is bad, but it's kind of like putting the football. You want to be better. You go out and play better opponents. So our non-conference schedule, hopefully we can get some of those, even if it's just scrimmages. So we can get used to our girls seeing how fast-paced that volleyball is until it's too late when we're already in that regional setting.
Coach, talk a little bit about your schedule this year and when you open the season.
We opened the season on the 23rd against East Canton at home. And then we go 3 straight games. And so we got a lot of back-to-back games right off the bat. So And then we have reserve early on. That's going to be always a big challenge. It's a local town, right down the street rival. So we got them like the second or third game, actually the third game in the season. So it's going to be right off the bat. And I think the second game's got Springfield. So our schedule is real tough right off the bat. So we're going to see how well we are and what changes we need to make us successful throughout the season.
All right, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to the season, look forward to covering you guys, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, thank you.
That was Coach Stephen Moore, new head coach of the Jackson Milton Blue Jays volleyball team that finished second in the MVAC last year, 17-6. He talked about Western Reserve. They are the team that ended with the top spot in the conference last year. So getting a tough team right off the bat and trying to see where you stand in the grand scheme of the conference in their third game of the season.
Well, yeah, and everyone, I mean, volleyball around this area, anyone that knows volleyball will tell you two of the most prevalent teams in the area, Western Reserve and Fitch. And you lose to Western Reserve last year, and what do? You go out and you grab someone from Fitch's system to bring them in. But, I mean, no, Jackson Milton does a fantastic job. It did a fantastic job last year, finishing last year. They brought in the new coaching. They want a new system, a new site to set forward on. And like you said, and like you heard it from there, his goal, let me make the districts first, and then we'll see. We'll go from there. But that means getting past Western Reserve and getting over top of Western Reserve. That game 3 on the docket is going to be very fun to watch.
By the way, last year, Springfield finished third. So they have the first 2 MVAC games of the season against the team that finished right behind them last year and the team that finished right in front of them last year. So Jackson Milton is going to learn very quick what they're made of this season. We talked about a lot of the football teams scheduling tough quick. And Jackson Milton doing the same thing. East Canton to start off on August 23rd. And then the next 2 days, they're playing Springfield and Western Reserve. 3 back-to-back games. It's one of the great things about volleyball. You get games 3 days in a row. You don't get practice time to correct yourself. You got to make those adjustments on the fly in game because you don't get a gym time.
And also, listen up, folks. There's 6 days in between each Friday. There's a lot of days where you could go catch some of these volleyball games, and there's some pretty darn good teams around the area too. So, and especially early on in the season, I mean, you don't got to worry about conflicting schedules. Go out and catch a couple of Jackson Milton games too, because I mean, there's going to be some fun things to watch too, especially in that MVAC.
I know you're excited about getting your hands wet a little bit with the Fitch program this year and getting down to some of their games to call Fitch volleyball. And like you said, they're one of the premier programs in the area. And Stephen Moore is a big reason why their culture is so strong in volleyball down there. He talked about the little Spikers program that starts them really young, kindergarten level, start teaching them the fundamentals a little bit. He did that at Fitch. We're expecting him to be able to do that at Jackson Milton and bring maybe in 5 or 6 years, we start talking about Jackson Milton being a culture, not just one of the best programs in the area, but a culture in the area that really puts an emphasis on volleyball. So excited for Jackson Milton and excited for things to come as they look to be one of the contenders in the MVAC this year in volleyball. We'll take a quick timeout, come back with more NE8 football previews on YSN.
Hello, I'm Greg Burbick with G. Burbick Farms. For the last 100 years, my family has farmed in Columbiana and Mahoning counties. I began raising cattle in 1996 with the goal of providing a better product for you and your family on the dinner table. Our grass-fed and grain-supplemented Black Angus beef are raised with no hormones, steroids, or antibiotics. We're known for our hometown-friendly service and incredible tasting products. We're locally owned and have customers across the tri-state area. Our products go from our farm to your family. Stop by our farm on New Buffalo Road or visit us on the web at gburbickfarms.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. G. Burbick Farms. It just tastes better.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions.
WRS Insurance Solutions is a local independent agency that specializes in life, Medicare, long-term care, and disability products. Call us at 330-953-3600 3722 or visit us at wrsinsuranceSolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
If you're looking for a quality pre-owned vehicle, why shop anywhere else but Tri-State Ford? Choose from our great selection of pre-owned vehicles. Plus, we've got you covered with our exclusive Tri-State Ford Advantage. It includes a 10-year, 200,000-mile warranty with your pre-owned vehicle and much more. Come see why so many customers from the Tri-State area buy their pre-owned vehicle at Tri-State Ford.
Customer focus, community driven. Tri-State Ford East Liverpool or visit tristateford.net.
No matter what the weather, be prepared with a reliable, efficient Rude gas furnace or air conditioner from MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. Call your energy efficient expert, MP Vivo, today for a free estimate.
Here at MP Vivo, we rely on Rude, and so should you.
It's storm season.
I think we're under the gun for some heavy storms over the next couple of hours.
And Storm Tracker 21 is ready.
This is probably the one we're keeping a closer eye on.
On air.
And locally, we're going to have a lot of eyes on our area.
Online.
All right, let's talk high-risk futurecast and the timing of this weather.
On social media and on our app.
Rain will come and go tomorrow. There'll be some dry intervals.
Stay ready with Storm Tracker 21.
The severe weather threat now through around sunset this evening.
Myers Family Insurance knows the importance of a great team.
Our team continues to grow to help you with your Medicare and retirement needs.
The annual election period is October 15th through December 7th. Now's the time to make sure your plan continues to meet your needs for the upcoming year.
Call today.
"60 years ago, Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods began with 3 siblings, a hand-set sawmill, and a few local orders. And while business has certainly changed over the years, what has not are our principles of hard work, craftsmanship, and commitment to quality. At Baird Brothers, we're proud to put our name on the products we create, from moldings and doors to flooring and lumber. Thank you for 60 great years. We look forward to 60 more. Baird Brothers, for the place you love."
Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Running Point on YSNLive.com, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. I'm Anthony Hartwig, joined by Ty Bartel. We just finished a really great interview with new head coach of the Jackson Milton volleyball squad, Stephen Moore. We thank him for joining the show. Want to let you know that the comments are open no matter what platform you are watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Also, the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline is also open, 330-886-0813. Give us a call, and we'd love to hear from our viewers any way that they would like to interact with us. We have gone through half of the NE8, and we continue with the Struthers Wildcats as they look to take that next step this season under Coach Bayek. Ty, well, I mean, we talked about Struthers and Girardin and Hubbard, the 3 teams that we expect to be huddling around that top and teams that we expect to make a big run this year and a big jump. What can you say about the Wildcats?
Well, the Wildcats last year, they finished with a record of 2-6, including the playoffs. Scored 116 points. Against them, they allowed 197. Couple of players that are going to be coming back. Couple of defensive players is Gino Calabret, linebacker who was second team NE8 last year, and then sophomore Anthony Carter, defensive back, first team NE8 last year as a freshman, which is pretty impressive, I might say, Anthony. But this is just goes to show how young this Struthers team actually is. And one of the areas that they want to improve on. Obviously, they need to be able to score more points, and the differential between points scored and points against was a little staggering last year. But I mean, it was just turnovers and unfortunate situations, just similar to Hubbard, as Anthony Romo highlighted. It was turnovers and unfortunate situations, a lot of defensive scores by other teams too on those turnovers that really bolstered those stats. But
Ty, those are really tough to come back from. When you give what I call NOTs, non-offensive touchdowns. And it felt like every time Struthers was getting ready to compete or getting ready to be there in a game, they'd give up a pick six or a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And those are just, they're backbreakers. And sometimes they're just luck. Sometimes you fumble the ball, someone gets it in a open space and breaks one tackle, and all of a sudden it's a touchdown. Or sometimes ball gets tipped and it's in a bad spot, and all of a sudden it gets picked off from back for a touchdown. So sometimes they're bad luck and bad breaks, but those non-offensive touchdowns can really break your back.
And you could also chalk that up, too, to the lack of practice times that they had, too, and the lack of preparedness maybe for each opponent. We know opponents were coming in and out each week. We know practice schedules were wonky. Sometimes you're stopping for 2 weeks, and then you're starting again. It's really hard, too, to teach taking care of the ball, too. Yeah. Throw in the fact that we had how many rain games and how many games where there was moisture on the field, too.
You could sit back and say, well, every team dealt with that, but it affects some teams more than others. That's just reality.
Yeah, every team got dealt a different hand.
Struthers was such a young team last year. It probably affected them a lot more than maybe a senior-led team.
Well, yeah, especially, too. I mean, I just told you, Anthony Carter, freshman last year, defensive back that was a first-team NE8. I mean, imagine that, though. This is a team full of a lot of young freshmen, sophomores. This is your first year in high school, maybe second year in high school sports, varsity level. You're throwing COVID now, where your practice schedule is all out of wonk. And now you're throwing this weird schedule where you have to prepare for a different opponent. A lot of these kids had to train at home during the summer too. So, I mean, it's very difficult too, especially for a team that's young, that's not even gotten to meet their coach or train under the coach and know what the coach kind of likes them to work on and has to kind of figure it out all on their own. It's tough. I do look for Struthers now that they had a year now. A lot of these younger players now had a year under the head coaching now. Get to learn the system a little bit more and get to be more proficient in the system, I think.
You know what else is going to help them? That community is going to be able to go support them. I mean, no one takes – well, I'm not going to say no one. Not a lot of teams take their football as seriously as Struthers. I mean, we had Coach Bayek on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how when they were having practice, there would be people lined up trying to get into their practice just to see this team for the first time. Struthers is very excited about their football, and for the first time for some of these kids, like Anthony Carter, first time, he's going to be able to hear people go nuts when he breaks a big run.
Yeah, exactly. And also, guys don't really realize how much of a close-knit community Struthers is, and you highlight that. And I'm glad you do highlight that, Anthony, because you notice that too a lot from the parents of Struthers. I mean, they go out and they support these kids' hearts, and then friends of families support their kids' hearts. It's a very close-knit community, and it's not just football. It's all sports that they go hard for. You saw it in basketball for both teams. You see it in volleyball, and you see it in baseball as well. I mean, this is a team that loves their sports, a community that loves their sports and loves their kids and supporting their kids.
Ooh, and one of the communities that we love being a part of so much at YSN, like when you go to a game at Struthers, especially one of the basketball games in that field house.
Oh yeah, that's a legendary field house.
But their football fans are back, and we know that they're so excited. So they should have a lot of energy from the crowd this year that they're able to feed off of.
And looking at their schedule this year, again, the 3 non-conference games, they start out August 20th at St. Thomas Aquinas. Then they go August 27th.
Yeah, I think we have to update that because I think we've been told that St. Thomas Aquinas is one of the teams that is either going to play 8-on-8 or not have a football season. You know, we've seen a couple of teams struggle with that. So I don't know if it's official yet or not, but
it may not be official. So that first week might be pending.
Might be up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, this is the latest schedules we have up to date, but thanks for getting that update on there. So we'll see on that August 20th game. The 27th, though, Crestwood is coming to Struthers at home. September 3rd, another Streetsboro game. So Streetsboro visiting this area from my backyard to yours a couple of times.
They're trying to pick up the NE8 a little bit.
Yeah, and then they start on their conference schedule with September 10th being home versus South Range, 17th home versus Hubbard, 24th at Lakeview, October 1st at Jefferson, October 8th versus Niles, 15th at Girard, 22nd at Poland.
You open the NE8 season with South Range, and then you close the NE8 season with Poland.
So you have a big game to look forward to at the beginning and at the end.
Then a lot of games that you're going to have a lot of pressure to win in between.
Yeah. And you know what? Strother's schedule is probably one of the most balanced that I'm looking at. It's not very front-loaded or back-loaded. It's pretty much throughout the year, there's a tough opponent mixed in, a really tough opponent mixed in about every other week. Whereas other teams, it seems like they have like 4 straight tough opponents, and then maybe the schedule lightens up a little bit before it gets a little tough again. But no, like Struthers it looks consistently, it's just has toughness throughout the schedule all the way through.
Yeah, and to play that schedule and to go through it, and we talked about Crestwood, not Crestview. Don't get Crestwood. I've made that mistake plenty of times. Crestwood, that's a strong football program, and then all of a sudden you're playing Streetsboro, who we've already talked about. That's a game you want to get healthy out of because they're a team that plays very physical.
But I mean,
how open the NE8 season against South Range? So you go through a tough non-conference, and then boom, here comes the Raiders.
I mean, look at these. But those are 4 straight games at home too: Crestwood, Streetsboro, South Range, Hubbard. Like bam, 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 and those are 4 straight home games. 4 out of the first 5 games are home for Struthers, which is kind of odd because they have a front-loaded schedule at least being at home.
For Struthers to take that jump, they have to come out of that with at least a winning record.
You have to think
then if you don't, you have to make up room almost exclusively on the road. That's asking a lot of your team.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple of games where an upset alert might be plausible for Struthers being on the road. At Lakeview, at Girard, I think those will be close games. At Poland can even be a close game if Struthers comes to play too. That young team can get hyped up being in that Poland crowd because we know how loud that Poland crowd can get too, especially if you're an opposing team. But that'll be a fun game to watch though too. But I agree with you, Anthony. That 4-week stretch, you got to come out winners, but it's going to be tough. Crestwood, Streetsboro, South Range, Hubbard. You got to at least be 2-2 out of that to have. Yeah,
it's very doable and something that Struthers has to try to aim for.
Yeah, if you could go 2-2 out of that, if you could survive that 4-game stretch, albeit it's at home too, so you do have the home crowd behind you, and we know how much the Struthers faithful will help out being behind the Wildcats. But
it's
you got
to. Even though Struthers is an underdog in some of those games, it's really hard to picture that program being an underdog because they're so proud. They're so historically great. They had one down year, and all of a sudden we're talking like, oh, they might be an underdog. They might be an underdog. And I'm thinking like, man, I'm still looking at Struthers like that's going to be a really tough game, and it will be. And I think we have to remember how proud that Struthers program is a little bit, and not take that for granted just because they had a year where they went 2-6 in a COVID year where they were very young.
You look at that September 10th game too, where South Range comes into town, and I'll tell you what, Coach Yeagley will tell you.
You want to make a statement? Open the NE8 season beating South Range at home.
Yeah, that would be huge. That would be huge. And Coach Yeagley will tell you as much as the next guy too. I mean, going into and playing in Struthers is not an easy crowd to play in front of if you're the away team, because that team, I mean, they get loud. They get loud for the Wildcats, and that stadium can get rocking. And Struthers feels like it's vibrating on a Friday night too with some of these games. So yeah, you got to really play up when you go home to play in Struthers. It's going to be a tough game though, and they got a tough schedule ahead of them, but it's part of what's going to make them better too, and it's part of helping them take that next step.
They have Anthony Carter. They lose Aiden Hall, who was one of the more electric players on their offense last year. So they have one guy that did a lot of damage, first team coming back, and another one that they have to kind of try to find ways to replace in Aiden Hall. So very interesting season ahead for the Struthers Wildcats. The road game against Lakeview is a perfect segue to talk about our next NE8 team in the Lakeview Bulldogs that are another NE8 team with a new coach in Sam Bellino trying to reinstill culture into this program.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at Lakeview, I mean, it was one of those seasons too, where you felt like COVID hit Lakeview a little bit harder, and they struggled a little bit. 1-7 last year, but I mean, this is part of what makes this year so optimistic, because this is the time for them to take that jump. And looking at Lakeview, pulling up their roster that I have here, and some of the players that they lost. Really, only one significant guy that was lost was Kyle Roberts, who was on their offensive line. You got a hole there, but Lakeview also is one of those schools that there's a lot of bigger offensive linemen that come out of the Lakeview, so they'll be able to replace that, you'd think, with some size. But they got a senior in Nate Fox, a defensive back this year that was second team NE8 last year as a junior. And I tell you what, he's a pretty talented kid too. And being senior year this year, he's fighting for that first team honors, and he might just get it with Lakeview this year, because Lakeview is a team everyone I think is counting out in that NE8, but I think they're a team that can surprise a lot of opponents.
Fox is a straight up ball hog. I mean, on the defense. I mean, it seems like he's always where the ball ends up in the air. Even if he's on the other side of the field, you'll see him come out of the frame, and all of a sudden, he's there for the pass breakup or whatever. He's just one of those safeties, and we there's a lot of them in football, whether it be college or professional, that just has a knack for getting in on plays. And you're going to be calling his name a lot if you're calling Lakeview games for YSN.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at Lakeview's schedule this year, as we pull it up here. Again, the 3 games that are going to be non-conference to start. They start out August 20th at LeBray, August 27th at Garrettsville Garfield, and then September 3rd versus Liberty at home. So we'll just stop there talk real quick on their non-conference game.
They're not shying away.
Yeah, August 20th at LeBray. That's going to be a tough game to start. We know how far LeBray went and how dynamic they were last year, and you have to start in front of that crowd. That's going to be a tough game to start.
We know that Lakeview's defense struggled last year, and to start off with LeBray, who was one of the more electric offenses that we saw in our area last year, who, by the way, Aiden Stevens coming to town, who is a newly committed Yale player for LeBray. Man, I gotta tell you, that's really that's a tough game to start with in LeBray, and then you go to Garrettsville Garfield, who has been a strong football program for it feels like 20 years. Made a playoff run, ran into Mooney last year in Division 5, but very proud program that's joining the MVAC. And then Liberty. I mean, wow, you're almost exclusively coming into the MVAC you are, because LeBray, Garfield, and Liberty all MVAC Scarlet Tier teams. So Lakeview making the Scarlet Tier tour to start the season.
Yep, and then going into conference play, they go September 10th versus Niles at home, September 17th at Struthers, or September 17th at Girard, September 24th, Struthers comes home to play Lakeview. October 1st, home versus Hubbard, and then October 8th at Poland, October 15th, home versus South Range, and October 22nd at Jefferson. And I actually circled that October 22nd game at Jefferson, because that game might have playoff implications late in the season, and it might be that one win that team needs. Because like we said too, with the division that they're in, 4-5 wins might do it. So that might be a game where some playoff implications are on the line for both teams.
Imagine if that game where both teams are kind of teetering on like the 14, 15, 16 seed, and like you win that game, you solidify a playoff spot. And if you lose that game, you're kind of hoping, you're not out of it, but you're hoping that you can hang on to a playoff spot. Man, that would be a fun week 10 matchup.
And I mean, yeah, their schedule lightens up a little bit. They get to face the lighter part of the NE8 going off of last year, obviously, after the non-conference. But then you got 3 straight tough: Hubbard, Poland, South Range, and then you go to Jefferson. So you might see Lakeview have a windy up and down season where they get some wins early on, they drop a couple, and that might be the game where it's like this is make or break for both teams.
I think it's important that a lot of those tough NE8 games are coming into Cortland. So you got a lot of teams that are gonna, we expect to be really tough for Lakeview, at least having to come into Lakeview and play them at home.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, I think COVID was one of those things that affected Lakeview a little bit harder than certain other teams too. Maybe not in the community standards like it did Struthers, but at least within the school standards and within the schools, it seemed like the players, their minds were elsewhere, and I mean, understandably so with the COVID going on and everything. I mean, the schedule kind of got thrown on players too last second, and some teams were scrambling trying to just find talent to get them because they didn't know they were even having a football season. So I mean, it was definitely a season where it was easy to be distracted by other things, where I think now Lakeview being totally focused on football, you're going to see them have a drastic improvement from what they were last year.
Lakeview wants to be talked about more. They should be talked about more, and this is one of the years where they have the definite chance to kind of submit their identity in the local media to be talked about more. I mean, you take a couple of these teams down the NE8, then all of a sudden we're talking about Lakeview a lot more than we would normally because the media kind of overlooks Lakeview. They're up in Cortland. They're not someone that a lot of our local teams play a lot. So they definitely are hungry for attention, and that's dangerous when that's a little chip on their shoulder a little bit. And they have the opportunity to get that attention this year by shining a light on the program with a new head coach and also a fairly new energy. You know, they have a social media presence now that Coach Bellino is doing a wonderful job running, and that can kind of boost a young team when they kind of can go and see some of their practice footage and their weightlifting programs and be lifted up on social media a little bit by their coach. You would be surprised how much that can boost a kid's confidence. So I think that's an important factor too. A lot of people might overlook it, but I think a new coach bringing in a new social media platform and giving kids a reason to kind of strive for success, big move by Coach Bellino.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be exciting too. A new coach, new culture. And it seems like it's a culture that really is all in on bringing more kids into the program and getting the kids super involved. So it's going to be exciting to watch what Lakeview has to offer with a new head coaching and new culture. So let's see what they have to offer going forward.
I think that's going to be big for them is how much they can get engagement from pre-high school, junior high, and even their Pee-wee programs, and how much their numbers can grow in the next 2 or 3 years to really solidify that program.
Yeah, and I mean, Bellino taking similar steps to YSN's own Coach Seidel and just trying to get that involvement from the younger, because Coach Seidel, just like Coach Bellino knows, you got to start young to get them up through the high school ranks, and you got to get that interest peaked at a young age to make them really want to get involved into the program.
You know what I really like about Coach Bellino and what I've seen so far from, what we hear from him? He's got energy. Like he's legitimately excited about Lakeview football. He's not just taking the job because it's a coaching opportunity. He is legitimately excited and energetic about what he can do for Lakeview's football program. And some guys, they come into a new program and it's like, I'm just here for a coaching job, or I'm just here to fill up some time. You got to tell that they put on the face and they look excited, but Coach Bellino backs it up with a lot of energy and a lot of excitement for this Lakeview program. That's the first step in building something special, is just being excited about where you're at, being excited about bringing them success, and excited for the future. That's the first step, and I'm very excited to eventually get Coach Bellino on to talk about some of his plans for not just being successful this year, but building a successful program in Cortland.
Absolutely, 100%.
So that is Lakeview and Struthers. We'll take a timeout, and we'll be back with the final 2 teams in the NE8 to wrap up our NE8 preview, Jefferson and Niles, coming up next on YSN.
Hi, everyone. This is DJ Yoakley with Your Sports Network. We appreciate your support of YSN and welcome you to the YSN family. Our broadcast streams are brought to you live at no cost to you by sponsors that are local to this community. Without the vision and generosity of our sponsors and partners, we would not be able to bring this game to you today. So please support the great businesses and leaders that are making this game possible. And if you're a business in need of great advertising and sponsorship opportunities, feel free to head over to our site for more information on the right fit for you. We are local, we are loyal, and we are live. We are YSN.
News doesn't stop after the sun goes down. Sometimes you just have to hustle to get it. At 21 News, no matter how far it is, no matter what it takes to get there, we're working to bring you the best stories and the freshest content at 11 p.m. with the context and clarity that makes it worth staying up for, no matter what time it is. 21 News at 11 with me, Erin Simonek, and Derek Steyer.
21 News at 11, news that's worth your time.
WRS Wealth Advisors is the area's premier wealth and retirement specialist. With our combined 70 years experience and comprehensive wealth strategy, we assist our clients attain their goals. Call 330-965-0370 to learn more about our individual and corporate financial planning services, or visit wrswealthadvisors.com. Good luck, athletes.
Every customer has a story, whether it's buying a car for the first time, helping them get approved, or finding the perfect car for their budget. I'm proud that people trust me with their story. I'm Tracy, and I'm ready to go the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Welcome back to YSN's Running Point Tuesday edition, August 3rd, as we are actually in the month of August, which is so kind of shocking to realize that we're finally in August. It feels like summer went by really quick. So welcome back to Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. As always, the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline open for business, 330-886-0813. Call us, and we'd love to hear from you. Also, the comment section wide open for whatever platform you are watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Let us know what your thoughts are, what we're talking about. We'd love to hear from you. So as we venture into the final two teams being previewed in the NE8 football preview on Running Point, we have to talk about Jefferson, another team in the NE8 that is under new management. Brandon Hanna taking over that team. He was the offensive coordinator last year for the Falcons, and now the reins are his. And what does he have returning, and what does he have to replace, and kind of what the schedule looks like? Ty, talk about the Falcons a little bit.
So Jefferson is actually a team I'm really excited for this year. 3-7 overall last year, including the playoffs. Scored 119 points, allowed 198. Deceiving though, because this was a very, very young team, a very young defensive team, and a very young offensive team. Let's talk a little bit about what they have returning. Offensively, you got a junior this year in Trent Hodge, who's a wide receiver. He was second team NE8 last year as a sophomore, so that's right off the bat impressive. Also, a sophomore this year in Danny Bruckman, who was a freshman second team NE8 running back last year. He's returning. Also, defensive player to watch, a freshman second team NE8 defensive lineman who's returning as a sophomore, Harrison Woodworth, this year. There's so many young splotches all over this team, Anthony, and there's a lot of talent in this team that is very young. 3-7 record last year, so not terrible. You saw they scored 119 points, allowed 198. Defensively, you could be a little bit sharper, but I mean, scoring 119 points on a team filled with freshmen, that's pretty solid there. And they have an offense that has something to it.
At the end of the day, you win or lose, and we get that. But man, Jefferson was a couple of plays away. I'm not kidding. Couple of plays away from being 5-5 instead of 3-7. I mean, they were right there. They had a goal line play set up. I believe it was against Hubbard, where they score a touchdown, they win, and the play just didn't work the way they wanted it to. And I believe they actually had a wide open receiver that their quarterback unfortunately missed. It was right there. He just didn't throw it to that guy. So a couple of plays that Jefferson was right there in games. So competitive. We already talked about how tough it is to make that road trip to Jefferson to play the Falcons anyway. They're a dangerous team. I don't care what anyone says. They're a dangerous team in the NE8, and they could throw a monkey wrench into things really quick.
Now, I still do think I think they're about one more year away from taking that huge jump and being like 7, 8, 9 win team. But I think you might see them take that jump and become 5 or a 6 win team. Remember, you got a lot of guys returning. These are sophomores that were freshmen, that were second team NE8 last year. That's a pretty huge honor to get as a freshman. So, there's 3 guys here looking to get first team honors: Trent Hodge, Danny Bruckman, and Harrison Woodworth. that are going to be really your core. You got your Hodge and Bruckman on offense, Woodworth on defense. You have your guys to build around and a young core to build around now. It's going to be exciting times for Jefferson here.
Remember, them in South Range, the only 2 Division 5 teams in the NE8. So 5-6 wins against almost exclusively Division up teams might be enough to get them into a playoff spot.
Absolutely. And I mean, new coaching with a new mindset. He's got a lot of young talent too. And that's such a beautiful thing to come into with having a lot of young talent.
Sometimes getting a new coach with a young team can be dangerous, but he's been in the program. He's the offense coordinator. He knows exactly what he's got. He doesn't have to instill a brand new culture or a brand new set of schemes. He's just taking the next step of responsibility, really. So I think that's an important factor.
He was the offensive coordinator that got freshman Danny Bruckman a second-team NE8 and sophomore Trent Hodge at the time, wide receiver, a second-team NE8. He's got both those players back as the head coach now, but I mean, obviously there's something there, and these players take to him. They take to his scheme, and it's going to be it should be some fun times to watch up in Jefferson.
You know what should be making Jefferson really excited? They have a wide receiver coming back that could make the jump from second team to first team, and an NE8 that overall very young secondaries in the NE8, and Jefferson might take advantage of that with their turf field and their ability to throw the ball a little bit more than most teams in the conference.
Absolutely. Taking a look, too, at Jefferson's schedule. Now, looking at Jefferson's schedule, it's always interesting to look because the teams, at least from around here, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to Jefferson because you got to travel to Jefferson, so it's a huge home advantage. But when they have to travel down here, it becomes a huge away advantage. So the home games and the away games mean that much more. But looking at their first 3 games that are non-NE8 games, non-conference, August 20th at Grand Valley, August 27th at Painesville Harvey, and September 3rd, Edgewood comes in to play Jefferson. Those are 3 games right off the bat, too. Again,
3 teams that are very familiar with playoff runs.
Yeah.
I mean,
again, the NE8 showing they're not afraid to schedule up non-conference games, and Jefferson taking a little bit different road than some of the other NE8 teams as far as the competition they're taking, but I mean, not shying away from competition at all.
I'd have to be corrected, but I believe Painesville Harvey is also Division 5. So Jefferson trying to take a little bit of a glimpse into what they could be seeing in the playoffs if they're able to get to that one of the top 16 seats.
And I mean, it's a great schedule too, because like you said, it gives you a glimpse, and it also just really, it shows you where you are, how far away, how close you are to some of the better teams in your division. So that's a game where you can really see, how do I match up against some of my division's best right now? And that's a great scheduling opportunity to really say, I'll take my best, you take your best, let's see who's better. And I mean, it should be a great early game and really early test for Jefferson.
Yeah, and you look at their NE8 schedule, and it's so important, like who they have on the road and who they have at home.
Yeah, we're looking at September 10th. They go to Girard. September 17th, home versus Niles. 24th at Hubbard. October 1st, home versus Struthers. October 8th at South Range. October 15th, home versus Poland. And as we know, that October 22nd game, home versus Lakeview.
So until those last 2, they kind of alternate home away, home away, home away.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you got to protect home field. You got to win your home games. And then if they can sneak one of those road games and win one of those road games, I think they'll be sitting pretty for the playoffs. I got to tell you.
And you know what? The favorable matchups, too, the ones that aren't going to be a little bit teetered, because, you know, the Hubbard, you're probably going to lean towards Hubbard. South Range, you're probably going to lean towards South Range in that matchup. Both of those are away games, so it's going to be a little bit heavier. But those 50-50 games that you would normally see, Struthers, Niles, those and Lakeview, those games are all at home, too. So those 3 teams, Struthers, Niles, Lakeview, all have to make that drive up to Jefferson area now. Jefferson getting that home field advantage, it might mean that much more, because I think those are the 3 teams that they're going to be competing with in the middle of that NE8.
Yeah, and like I said, protecting the home field going to be crucial in Jefferson. And you got winnable games coming up at home.
Yeah, and you look at the way they close out their schedule, that October 8th at South Range, October 15th home versus Poland. That was 1 and 2 in your NE8, so you know you're going to get stiff competition there, and then you close out the season with Lakeview. So Jefferson, again, in the same situation like we said Lakeview was in, where Jefferson might have good win-loss record, but they might drop one, maybe two. South Range and Poland, they might even come out 2-0. Who knows? But that's going to be a tough schedule. But you got that last game versus Lakeview that might have huge playoff implications for both teams.
I think the biggest game of the year for Jefferson and kind of telling us how they're going to be is that Niles game. Niles comes to Jefferson, right? So yes. Niles is going to be a game where I think we either decide whether Jefferson's going to be where they were last year or they're going to take the next step, because Niles is in the same boat. So you have to separate yourselves from the teams that are kind of in the same boat as you if you want to take steps towards betterment. So Niles in the same kind of boat. They struggled a little bit last year trying to replace a lot. Jefferson, same boat. So we'll see how they can kind of separate themselves from the Dragons or not separate themselves, however that game goes.
And with the schedule previous, I mean, Girard, Edgewood, Painesville, Harvey, and Grand Valley, 3 of them being away games with Edgewood being the only home game, it's really a schedule, too, where you can realistically see them possibly being 2-2, and that could be a very definitive game where you could be 3-2, 2-3, and it's going to be middle of the season, September 17th. So, I mean, the weather's going to be good. Everyone should be healthy. Rush should be all off. These two teams should be ready to go come September 17th.
If they can come out of that Niles game 3-2, they'll be sitting really pretty to try to get to a playoff spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you follow with at Hubbard, home versus Struthers, at South Range, home versus Poland, home versus Lakeview. You can possibly winning 2 games, then being Division 5 out of those next 5 games. If you start 3-2 with your first 5, yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Anthony. That Niles game is going to be definitive because that's their 5th game on the schedule, and it's really going to map out the next 5 games, how much work needs to be done. Because when you look at your opponents, Hubbard, Struthers, Poland, South Range, and Lakeview, it's a lot easier to only win 2 of those games than 3 of those, trying to look at that.
I think the biggest advantage Jefferson's going to have this year against a lot of the teams that they play in the NE8 is they're returning a receiving core that is very experienced, and they're going to be going up against some young secondaries in the NE8. Not a lot of teams in that conference are returning a lot of people in the secondary. So that's going to be an advantage that they're going to have to try to exploit every week, their ability to use their experience in the receiver slot to maybe break some gaps in secondaries and blow the tops off of some defenses, because Jefferson likes to throw the ball, unlike a lot of teams in the 88 who are more of a running style. Jefferson is not afraid to air it out, so they're going to have to do that against a majority of young secondaries in the conference.
And that could point to some of Jefferson's struggles, because we forget to mention, too, there was a lot of games that had to face with rain last year, too. On top of the fact that there was the COVID, there was a lot of games that were rained out and a lot of games that were just rain in them in general, a lot of bad weather.
Thankfully, nothing like week 1 happened again.
Nothing like the monsoon. But there was definitely rain throughout the week. So it seemed like almost every Friday or Saturday, at least one of the games was facing rain, and it seemed like Jefferson was in a lot of those rainy games too. So, I mean, it prohibits the pass too, and it prevents the pass from being as effective in the rain. So hopefully some better weather too will benefit the Jefferson Falcons this year too.
Talked about how important of a game that Niles game will be. We talked about Jefferson's side of the coin. Let's flip it and round out our NE8 football previews by talking about the Red Dragons and what the Niles program is going to be looking to bring back, looking to replace, and what their schedule looks like this year.
So you're going to be looking for Niles to try to replace some holes in their offense. As Zach Leonard,
Leonard's the biggest hole.
Yeah, first team NE8 quarterback that's gone, and then you got Alini Fryer too, a first team NE8 receiver, wide receiver that is no longer with Niles. So you're going to be looking to try to replace those players that are going to be returning. Antoine Gardner, running back that is returning, 564 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. Looking for him to take a big step, as well as a junior and Matt Keeley, an offensive lineman that was second team NE8 last year. Niles though. Yeah, the loss of Leonard is going to be really what's unfortunate for Niles. Niles was 5-4 last year, 147 points scored, 121 points against. And I mean, Leonard is really what made that whole offense go. He was that engine. So Niles going to be looking to replace that, and they might be turning more to a ground and pound game now that you have Antoine Gardner, who had a really successful season last year.
I think they're going to have to pivot and become a more running style team. They have a experienced running back, experienced offensive line coming back. And whoever they throw into quarterback is going to be someone that's new to the varsity level. So you might want to make a little bit of a pivot and become a little bit more of a run style team.
And there's a couple of defensive players lost too. Zach Cicero, defensive lineman, first team NE8 lost. Curtis Taylor, linebacker, first team NE8 lost. They do get senior Noah Durr, a defensive back that was second team NE8 last year. But a lot of guys, this was a very old team last year. A lot of seniors on this team that kind of aged out. So they're going to need to try to figure out with the younger guys that they have. They have some younger talented pieces that they could plug into these holes. Let's see how effective these pieces are going to be and how much they can take that next step too for the Red Dragons.
Niles might just be in the position that a Hubbard or a Struthers were in last year, where they're just trying to go through some growing pains and get some kids some quality varsity experience that they can use in the next couple of years to really take that next step as a program.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always tough when you build a program around such a talented quarterback as Zach Leonard was, and when you have to eventually say goodbye to that piece, as every high school team does, you kind of have to reshift your offense, and some teams do go through the growing pains. It's hard to see teams immediately bounce back. They can do it. They have the pieces that can do it. We'll just see if these players can take that next step. Are they ready to take that next step, or do they need maybe a little bit more varsity experience, maybe another year under their belt before they're ready to do it?
That's what makes high school so fun. There's no 10-year contracts putting a quarterback in your team for 10 years. You got 4 years with them, and even if they're special, you got 4 years, and then you have to move on. So Niles in that position with Zach Leonard. And Fryer, by the way. Leonard to Fryer was one of the best 1-2 punches or best quarterback receiver tandems that we saw in the area last year.
Absolutely. And looking a little bit at Niles' schedule, there are 3 non-conference games to start. August 19th, home versus Howland. August 27th at Alliance. And September 3rd, home versus East. Non-conference-wise, Howland right out of the gate, that's going to be a tough, rough and tough game. And you're going to see how well these younger players do against Howland, because Howland's experienced and they have a lot of guys that are returning experience.
Can you imagine going to your team and be like, hey, we're going to switch to a little bit more of a run style offense, and your first game is against Howland in that run defense, those big boys up front, and how good they are at stopping the run? Talk about throwing your team to the Sharks a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and it's a team that's going to be tough. I mean, home field advantage for Niles, so that might pay off for them going up against the Howland Tigers. But we know Howland, they're big and they have depth. So I mean, if they need to give some of their guys a rest, they have another guy reloaded right behind them.
Good news, though, if you can run against that defense, then you can run against almost anybody in the area. So
absolutely,
if you're able to establish your run dominance in that Howland game, got to be a sign of confidence for the rest of the season.
Ultimate test there. And then you go against at Alliance and then home versus East, the next 2 non-conference games. And both these games are winnable games for Niles. These are the toss-up games, and these are games that are going to be interesting to see. The Red Dragons, their young team now, their newly now young team, go up against some opponents that might give them some confidence boost, and they might be able to get a win or 2 out of these games.
East is very interesting, and we'll talk about them when we talk about the Steel Valley Conference. It's hard to figure them out a little bit, so that's what you're going to make that game so interesting, because East had glimpses last year where they were like, oh man, they look really good, and of course glimpses where they didn't look so hot. So can they get consistency will be the main issue for East. But that's one of those, Niles versus East is one of those pivotal 50-50 games that whoever wins is going to take a lot of confidence going into the rest of their schedule.
Absolutely. And then starting right into conference play at Lakeview, September 10th, at Jefferson, September 17th. Your home versus Poland, September 24th. Home versus South Range, October 1st. At Struthers, October 8th. Home versus Hubbard, October 15th, and home versus Girard, October 22nd. Yeah, I mean, looking at that schedule, this one is a little bit front-loaded with a lighter schedule, and then it gets really tough to close out the schedule for Niles as they go Lakeview and Jefferson, who both were on the bottom end of the NE8 last year. We expect them to make big jumps, and those should be competitive games. But then you get to go Poland and then South Range, who are at least both coming home to Niles, but those are going to be very tough home games, and those are games where you feel like the away team might be the favored in that situation.
Yeah, we talked about how important that Jefferson game is going to be for the Falcons. It's going to be just as important for Niles because, like you said, the next 2 games after that get real really quick. So you got to get the wins where you can, and that Jefferson game is going to be a 50-50 toss-up. And if Niles can come out of that with a win, bring some confidence into those next 2 games, then they're going to be sitting a lot more in a better position to go and play those games rather than losing to Jefferson and having to kind of bounce back. Tough to bounce back when your next game off the docket is Poland or South Range.
Favorable, though, for Niles that they do have 6 home games on the docket this season, and 4 of the last 5 games are at home. September 24th to October 22nd, with the only exception with October 1st being at South Range. So not a whole lot of traveling, or October 8th at Struthers, So not a whole lot of traveling that needs to be done for Niles in that last stretch of the 5 weeks of the season. They'll be home. They'll be practicing at home. They'll be familiar. So they might be able to sneak some wins there. But that last 5 games of the season, I agree with you, Anthony, that Jefferson-Niles game is going to be huge because, again, for Niles, the next 5 games is going to be how many do you need to win after that Jefferson game is going to be really the question.
Right. And at least when they have that conversation, they will be able to say these games are home. I mean,
yeah,
you can look at that and say we have home field advantage.
Yeah, and I mean they're all games that are going to be tough, but I mean it's a little bit easier with having home crowd behind you, but you're going to need it because stiff competition's coming into town, and it's definitely going to need they're going to bring their A game to you for sure.
Their line will be fine. Their defensive line coming back full strength almost. Linebackers, you already brought up that one of their first team linebackers graduated. So their linebackers are going to be young, but their defensive line is going to be strong. So it's going to be a kind of a interesting dynamic to see how Niles kind of meshes with a very strong, experienced defensive line trying to bring up a very inexperienced and young linebacking core.
Well, yeah, and you might see those teams such as Niles have better success against teams such as Poland, those teams that are the ground and pound games. Those are the games where maybe Niles gets the upset and sneaks a win off of Poland. Where games against South Range, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative because you know what South Range is planning on coming in there and doing. So, you know, pass wise, you're going to have to be a little bit creative, but these teams that are very run heavy, you might see Niles have a little bit more success against those type of teams.
The teams that do a really good job of bringing them back out of the backfield are going to give Niles fits, I think, because one of the hardest things to teach a linebacker, especially a young linebacker, is pass coverage, right? And they're going to be responsible for manning up the running back out of the backfield a lot. So you're going to get a lot of inexperienced linebackers on running backs that are versatile. So those teams like Struthers that has a really good running back out of the backfield and Hubbard, I think are going to really be big tests for a young linebacking core for Niles to try to build the fundamental covering running backs out of the backfield as a linebacker in the pass game.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, there might be some growing pains, but this is a very great opportunity for a lot of the younger players on Niles to take that next step. And you might see some stars names that we're not saying right now, Anthony, that we might be talking about towards the end of the season. And it's a great opportunity nonetheless for a lot of young players on the Niles Red Dragons team.
I think Niles is looking at this season like a kind of a 3-year process, where they're just trying to get experience this year, get as many wins as they can with the experience they have. But then if they go through some lumps, they're going to be, fire in their eye next year with a lot of experience. And then all of a sudden Niles becomes a dangerous program again.
Yeah, and I mean, most programs, the best programs, it's usually a 1 to 2 year lapse that it usually only takes. And some very rarely, they don't miss a beat. That's very rare, and it really requires just having talent behind talent and having a really good program invested from young ages up and just having that filtered through. But I mean, yeah, when you lose big players like a Leonard, it's hard, and it does usually take a year to 2 to get back on your feet. But Niles has been a program that has been consistently able to do that. So we'll see if they're able to do it again, though, because it's a huge loss in losing Leonard.
The NE8 is going to be really fun, and I want to remind people of this comment here that could be an interesting topic as we go through the season of the NE8 by Chris Sigler. Very real possibility that all NE8 teams make the playoffs. And I said a bold prediction. I'm going to say all NE8 teams do make the playoffs. I think the 2 teams that are biggest question marks, well, maybe the 3 teams, because now we talk about Niles, and the Niles, Lakeview, and Jefferson are going to be the teams that you really gotta work hard to make the playoffs. And man, I think they can do it. Especially Niles and Jefferson. Especially Lakeview and Jefferson. Really think that they have what it takes to make that next step. And that Niles versus Jefferson game in the second week of the NE8 schedule, that's going to be really important to decide which team has the upper hand going to the playoffs.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm really hot on Jefferson, and I'm really excited to see what the Jefferson Falcons bring this season, because 3-7, like I said last year, not a terrible record for a young team that was battling through COVID just as well. They opted to play the 10 games last season. They wanted to play the full schedule. They wanted to get their kids experience. And I think you're going to see that those extra games and that little extra experience is going to pay off for a lot of these Jefferson area Falcons, because a lot of young teams making a second team NE8, a lot of teams that have these young players and a young offense, a young defense, a new coaching scheme. It's going to be fun to watch, I think, for the Falcons, and I think they will definitely be the team to watch. That's going to be a biggest surprise, take the biggest jump, I think, in the NE8 from last year to this year.
We will not fall into the trap of making NE8 predictions. We're not gonna predict stuff, but what we can say is the NE8 is making statements and strides to say consistently, especially we went through all their schedules, and almost all their non-conference schedules are loaded with teams that are known for making deep playoff runs in whatever division they're in. The NE8 is trying to make a clear and a decisive statement to the rest of the area that we are the football conference in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a conference that, I mean, stiff competition all the way around. And it's a conference that really makes itself better by playing each other year in and year out. And by doing that, they're a team that the teams that struggled, or the teams when they struggle, you never feel like they're too far off from making that jump and getting right back into contention. And the teams that are contending that kind of fall off, it's not really too far of a step back before they get right back to where they were. The NE8 is just filled with a lot of great coaches and a lot of great communities that support their teams. And on top of all of it, that's really the driving force behind what makes, I think, these teams so successful, is great communities, great coaches, and great involvement from both.
And even if teams struggle, they're struggling, but they're struggling against South Range, Poland, Hubbard, Struthers. There's all these programs that are so historically great and have such proud traditions. Oh, you're struggling against that league. Not as much of a knock as some other teams that struggle in other leagues.
70% of your schedule is taken up by playing the NE8 every year. And we talk about how talented the NE8 is and how many good teams there are in the NE8 and good programs there are in the NE8. It's tough. It's tough to win against them, and you have to play each other. So someone has to lose in the event of playing each other. So teams are going to get losses on their record. It's just you got to go through the gauntlet of playing your conference, and they don't make it any easier on themselves with the 3 non-conference games, as most of them just schedule up anyway.
What we're not going to make predictions, but what we can do is remind people of how the conference shook up last year. South Range won it. Poland was second. And then a lot of teams vied for that middle spot. I believe it's going to be a little bit less 2 teams at the top and then a bunch of teams fighting for that middle ground in the NE8. I think it's going to be every team fighting for what could be a top spot, and we could see a lot of late game matchups have a lot of meaning in weeks 9 and 10.
Well, especially with it being a 10-game schedule as well. I'll run through the standings too. Just in the regular season, the 6-game season, South Range was 6-0, Poland 5-1, Hubbard 4-2, Niles 4-2, Girard 2-4, Struthers 2-5, Jefferson 1-5, and Lakeview 0-6. In the playoffs, they picked up wins. Obviously, Lakeview 1-7, Jefferson area 3-7, Struthers 2-6, Girard 4-6. But all these teams, I mean, you're looking at every single team had a win in the division. But I mean, Struthers 2-6 last year. That's a team that I think is going to make a jump. Jefferson 3-7, including playoffs. Girard 4-6. I mean, a lot of them hovering around that 500 mark once the playoffs were included. These are teams that are going to be right around. I mean, Hubbard and Niles were both 4-2. We said Niles might take that step off, but Hubbard 4-2, right under Poland and South Range. And I think those were their 2 losses, I think, were against those 2 teams. So, I mean, can Hubbard take that next step, beat one of those teams, get in there? I mean, there's so many storylines within the NE8 this year and so many fun matchups.
No matter how it shakes up, I guarantee whoever's in the bottom 3, if they make the playoffs, they're going to make some teams shaking their boots, because that schedule absolutely will prepare you for whatever playoff run you have to make. And we saw a couple of teams win playoff games after finishing on the bottom half of the NE8 last year. So if you finish in the bottom of the NE8, don't fret, because you could still make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, could you imagine if you have to play a Jefferson or a Struthers right out of the gate? I mean, that's not a team to scoff at. Those are 2 teams that always have upset alert written under them if they're the underdog or considered the underdog in any game.
So that wraps up our NE8 preview for the continued high school football previews that we're going through. Tomorrow, we'll tackle the Steel Valley Conference, as we also have a slate of guests tomorrow with Salem soccer coach that coaches the boys and girls programs. Mike Bailey will be in studio. Brian Tolar coming on at 1 tomorrow. So a lot to look forward to tomorrow, but that wraps up our NE8 preview for today. We will be right back. Come back and finish out the last hour of Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
Ah, the details. Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods is one fine ride. Perfect cornering, superb handling, sporty and stylish, power to spare, plus awesome mileage. Yeah, jaw-droppingly beautiful lines and well appointed with luxurious trim. Put more oomph in your life and start beholding the molding. Find your home's fine hardwood at BairdBrothers.com.
Planning a project around your home or rental property? Trust the electrical service to the local experts with 62 years of serving the Mahoning Valley. Joe Dickey Electric is your local go-to source for responsive, reliable residential electrical work. From everyday maintenance and repairs to new installations, electrical upgrades, and safety inspections, no job is too big or too small. Call Joe Dickey Electric today, 800-549-3976, or visit DickeyElectric.com. That's DickeyElectric.com.
For heating, cooling, and indoor air quality, the Mahoning Valley trusts MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning, offering worry-free repair, service, and installation. Call MP Vivo today for a free estimate.
MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. We're your energy-efficient experts.
Attention, current lessees of most makes and models. Tri-State Ford has a special offer for you. Come to Tri-State Ford, turn in your lease early, and get up to $2,500 in trade equity toward a new Ford or pre-owned vehicle. Plus, our exclusive Tri-State Ford Advantage includes a 10-year, 200,000-mile warranty. Early lease turn-in for most makes and models with up to $2,500 trade equity.
Customer focus, community driven. Tri-State Ford East Liverpool, or visit tristateford.net.
Welcome back to Running Point, the Tuesday edition, live on ysnlive.com, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Anthony Hartwig with you alongside the infamous Ty Bartell. I shouldn't say infamous. Infamous has a bad connotation. You're not infamous, you're famous, especially for your robotic trivia questions. We will never play trivia on Running Point. I guarantee that, Ty. So if you're looking to strut your trivia skills, it's not happening. I am making that executive decision. We will not play unless it's like a Stump the Schwab situation where we try to get our comment sections to stump Ty. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll see who can stump Ty with like comment trivia questions and see if you can stump Ty.
You don't want 3 hours of me just whooping your ass on running point trivia. You don't think that'd make for good content?
We continue this Tuesday edition. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in the Olympics yesterday, and we start with the U.S. women's national team, who did drop their game. We brought them up yesterday because we didn't know the results. It happened early in the morning. I was trying to stay away from it so I could watch it on delay. They did drop their semifinal game to Canada 1-0. So the United States will have to play for bronze. And a lot of people are clamoring now, hey, USA, you were a little bit too focused on other things, not focused on soccer. And here comes Canada to kind of take your spot. Do you think it's that? Do you think it was, eventually teams get old and USA is full of a lot of veterans and eventually the world's going to catch up to you? Or is it something else to kind of cause them to lose this game against Canada and now have to play the bronze medal?
I mean, it's hard to say too if they had their minds elsewhere too, because we can't be in the minds of them. We can't tell how focused or how not focused they were on anything. Is it possible? Sure. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely possible. But I mean, it is also very possible that, I mean, it happens to all teams. They go through phases. This happens in every single sport where there's phases. Every team has their high points before they finally succumb to another team. We see it in basketball. We see it in football. We see it in baseball. Every team has their era, their dynasty before they fade out and finally succumb to another team. And there's nothing to scoff at with a loss to Canada, especially with it being only 1-0. Canada also a very successful soccer program up there too. The women's soccer team's been pretty successful for Canada as well. And I mean, losing to the neighbors to the north, yeah, it might suck, but we have gotten a lot of gold medals out of this Olympics so far. And I mean, still competing for bronze, so still going to be on the podium stand. Yeah, unfortunate we're not going to come out on top with it. Yeah, and it's hard to say. It's hard to say where their minds were. It's an unfortunate loss, but at the end of all days, sports, it's just they go through eras and they go through their ups and downs, and this might just be the end of an era.
I'll tell you what, Ty, I can't speak on what their minds were like for the whole tournament, but I'll tell you what, in that first game against Sweden, they were not focused. They were not a focused team. They were getting manhandled consistently. They were getting outflanked. They were getting outshot. I think in the first half, because I watched the first half on the way to the studio, the Americans only had 2 shots at goal at halftime. 2 shots. I mean, that's just, you're getting absolutely dominated by a team that, fairness, gave United States trouble for years. Sweden's a great program. They beat them earlier in a friendly in the spring, but at the same time, they just did not look like they were there mentally. And I don't know if that has to do with the stuff that they've been kind of putting up in their what do you call the stage that they're set in, the things that they're speaking about, or if it's just one of those things that happens in sports where they didn't show up. It definitely happens. But I will tell you, that first game, they were not mentally prepared to play Sweden. And I don't know how much that lingered throughout the Olympics. Don't know how much that lingered against Canada. It was a competitive game, 1-0, but they didn't look mentally there against Sweden for sure.
Could have also just been a shock being under Tokyo's rules and being in that bubble too. And I mean, some people, it's clearly affected some individuals differently, on individuals from a multitude of countries too, just being in that bubble and being kind of just trapped, and you can't really go anywhere on it. You have to compete. You have to compete there. So, I mean, and then you have the protesters like we highlighted yesterday too. I mean, it's a situation too where, it's easy to get distracted in, for sure, for a lot of athletes, and some are able to stay focused. Some it's not as easy to.
That team's always going to be a team that you either love or hate because of the stances they take and everything. And they got a lot of people that were almost happy they lost. I don't know if I like the feel of that. Like, could a U.S. team do something? They didn't do anything like that, hurt anybody or broke any laws or anything like that. Could you disagree with a stance so much that you're rooting against your country to win? Like, that just,
I mean, obviously you can, because there's people that are doing it, right?
But it bothered me. Like, I don't agree with everything the team does, but at the end of the day, Well, they are playing for the country, and I can't go as far as saying that I'm rooting for them to lose. Like I was not happy they lost. I rooted for them to win that game. It bothers me when I saw people celebrating them losing. It just like, that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. No, I agree with that because I truthfully, regardless of your political affiliation, your religious affiliation, I'm Team USA all the way in the Olympics. I don't care what you do with your time personally or what you believe with your own personal time personally. When it comes to playing the sport or the event, and you represent the red, white, and blue, I'm all for you, and I'm rooting behind you all the way to bring home the gold because I want us represented well on the world stage and to showcase that we are and still have the greatest athletes in the world.
Talk about domination as we go from a team that lost to a team that continues to win. The U.S. women's basketball team has not lost a pool stage game ever in the Olympics since women's basketball has been inserted back in 1976. Now, I don't know if that's the official number. Kind of did the math in the head. That's 11 Olympics, average of 5 pool games if the format stayed the same. 55-0 in pool play as an Olympic sport for the United States women and women's basketball.
And women's basketball in the United States, talk about just the last 10 years and the jump from the last 10 years from 2011 to now and how drastic that jump in itself has been, and even how drastic it's been from 2001 to 2011 and 2001 to now, and how much more prevalent women's basketball has become in the United States and how much younger we're starting to teach these young women and starting to really recognize them as these are athletes. And I've had the honor of seeing some absolute ballers at the high school level. And through the college ranks, we know what UConn's been able to do too. With their program and now going into WNBA ranks too. We know a list of names too throughout the WNBA that are shaking things up and really turning heads. So, I think it's great for women's Olympics, and I think it's great for women's sports in general to showcase how dominant we've become in just the short amount of time that we started to really focus in on, hey, we should really start investing into women's sports and women's basketball, especially because there's a lot of talent here in the U.S.
Yeah, we saw another gold medal in gymnastics as well as Dade Carey gets the floor exercise gold after not a very particularly good performance in the vault. Had to shake that off. She balked in her vault exercise and did a very basic vault that caught her off the podium, able to bounce back and get a gold medal. We've talked a lot about these athletes in the Olympics having to bounce back from so much adversity, and there's so many stories. Talk about that. Bouncing back from a very disappointing exercise the night before, you're exhausted. You've been in Tokyo for a week. You've done tens and tens of routines getting ready, and now here's the last event that you're competing in. You got to be mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. You go out and you win gold, and you go first. So that gold medal score has to last throughout the whole rotation. Pretty impressive to get another gold medal in gymnastics at that point.
Absolutely. And you know what? Gymnastics is kind of similar to me in baseball, especially at this level, and where, defensively you make you do an error, baseball or softball, you first baseman flubs a ball, whatever, allows the team to score a run. You have that chance to come right back in. First baseman can hit the home run, hit a game-winning RBI, or, get right back in. You have that opportunity almost immediately or right back the next day too. And it's the same thing. It's here in gymnastics where, some people just have bad days too. And you could have, it's very hard to sweep anything in gymnastics, gold, anything, to sweep multiple events. So, you could have those bad events. There's so many different events that showcase so many different skills and different muscle groups and just different skill all around that, yeah, you might be able, they might flub one day and, they might have a bad day one day. And we already know how exhausting it can be. But to have a bad day one day and just immediately refocus and get your mind right for the next event and to come away with gold. That's the beauty of Olympics. And the same way that you should love gymnastics, the same way you love baseball is that, I mean, you got the next day to look forward to. So, I mean, short-term memory is what you need. And clearly she had it from day one to day two.
Yeah, when you look at some of the other Olympic stars that have come through, how about Dressler continues to impress in the swimming pool, continues to shine a light on men's swimming. And did you happen to see they put a camera on the color commentator Rowdy, and his energy in the broadcast booth for swimming, being able to see that firsthand and see how nuts he goes for these swim meets. That's just what we aspired to at YSN. I don't know if you were able to catch it, but man, was it fun. Not only fun to watch swimming, but fun to see kind of a peel behind the curtains and see how much he gets into these races that he calls.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful too. And I mean, it's nice to see the men's swim team after Michael Phelps still bringing home medals and still staying prevalent as ever. And honestly, swimming has just been huge too. I mean, if you look at the color commentator, how excited he gets. I mean, we do swimming here, like you said, on YSN, and the numbers go through the roof every time we have any sort of meet here. There's a market for swimming. There's a people that legitimately enjoy watching it. And I mean, learning the sport more and just really trying to get into it more and trying to understand where these people really are enjoying this sport from. And you can understand why there's a market for it. And I mean, these people, and especially at the high school level, get really behind these swimmers. And there's some pretty good ones in this area that we have right now that go on to compete on bigger stages for sure.
Yeah. So the 4x100 relay, the medley relay for the Americans, closes out the Tokyo swim meets with a gold medal. So congratulations to the United States swim team that is just putting that sport on such a high pedestal. We saw it at YSN and the viewers that we got over the weekend for the Youngstown Club swim championships at Applewood Swim Club. So perfect timing to kind of have swimming on the network right when it's in the at its peak in the Olympics, and just to kind of get a glimpse into how big that whole community is in swimming was fantastic. And closing out the Tokyo Games in the swim pool, at least for the swimmers. The divers are still doing their competition, but for the swimmers, it's been a fun ride watching Olympic swimmers.
Absolutely. And I mean, for the YSN level, I mean, it's been nice that, you know, we've listened to you. I mean, people were asking for it for how long that we include swimming too on the network and swim meets. And we finally, we heard the request and we finally started putting it up. And boy, oh boy, did you guys show up in numbers that we weren't expecting. I mean, just huge numbers through the roof, viewership numbers for these swim meets. And like you said, Anthony, there's a market for it, and there's a fan base, and these people that are into it, they're really into it, and they're really passionate about it. And I mean, as long as they're passionate, we're going to keep giving it to them too. So, I mean, it's the best of both worlds too. They talked, we listen.
And we go from, swimming transitions right into the track and field events at the Olympics. Raven Saunders won the silver in shot put for the Team America. And talking about shot put and discus, we have a very young gentleman in the area that is just lighting up the national stage with what he's able to do in shot put and discus. Booker Newberry, he's an 8th grader at Austintown Fitch. We talked about him a little bit last week and what he was able to do to qualify for the national meet. In this national meet, he threw the discus 127 feet, finished 4th in this national meet with that number. The winner, by the way, threw the discus 177 feet. Just ridiculous what we're seeing out of these track and field contestants at such a young age. And Austintown Fitch is looking at that at the high school level, saying, one more year, buddy, and let's get together real quick for a 4-year bite to eat for domination in the shot put and discus for track and field.
Absolutely. And you know what, as prevalent as Austintown sports are in football, softball, men's and women's basketball, and baseball, the baseball and softball, these teams, the one that we really kind of scoff over at and we don't really talk about nearly as much as the track and field team, and they haven't really garnered much attention, but the track and field team at Austintown has been tops for years now, and they've consistently have bred top track and field stars, and a lot of the football stars and basketball stars that and we knew the names of are actually really good in track and field. Nate Leskovac is one that immediately comes to mind as you think of him as a really good basketball and football player. He's a lot better at track too, and he's pretty damn good at basketball and football. So I mean,
if you've enjoyed watching Nate Leskovac in football and basketball, you should see him on the track and what he's able to do running without football pads on. It's almost like watching a gazelle if he was held down by a bunch of weight and then all of a sudden the weight gets lifted off of him and he's just booking it down this track. And you kind of start to realize when football players get to run without their gear on, how fast they really are.
Yeah, and how much weight they are bogged down by when they do have all their gear on. But yeah, I mean, like we said, people talk and we listen, and we're looking to talk more and feature more track and field as we can here on YSN, because we know there's also a market for that. And there's a lot of great athletes, not just at Austintown, but a lot of great track and field athletes in the area in general. A lot of them do that go to national stages and are top college stars now too. So, I mean, there's a lot of track and field talent in the area, and I think it's about time we finally start showcasing it and talking a little bit about it.
Well, like you said, Ty, we hear the people that are clamoring for it, and I promise when track and field comes up in the spring, we are going to be an outlet for the coaches, the players, the community to be a lighthouse for the sport. Come on, Running Point. We'd love to hear from coaches and players and to dive deeper into the track and field community. That's what this show is going to be about going forward, is just no matter what sport you play, no matter what sport you coach, we're going to shine a light on you. And we thank the coaches that we've already had. We're just getting started. And that's what really excites me about Running Point moving forward, is we are really going to serve as an outlet for the communities that aren't just football, basketball, and baseball, softball. All the other sports that might feel like they don't get talked about enough or they don't get enough attention, come to us. We're ready. Let's go.
Absolutely. And I mean, the future's looking bright. And like you said, and like I've said constantly, if there's something that you want featured, let us know. Cause I mean, we hear you. We hear you when you talk. And I mean, enough of your voices. It's hard for us to ignore you. So, I mean, we did it with the swimming, and I mean, track and field's the same way. We hear the voices. We hear the people clamoring for it. It's about time we finally give it to them.
You know, that's the thing, like, okay, you've talked for a while. Now it's time to step up to the plate and actually come on a Running Point. And we're giving you the outlet. Come on, the door's open. So we've heard you talk, and now it's time to give us the content. We love talking to coaches, players, and anyone in the community about the sports that they love and they pour passion into. Because that's the thing people forget. Like, even if your sport is less popular in the national stage, you don't work any less hard to do what you do. I mean, like, swimmers don't work any less hard to, cut times off of their relay teams than the basketball team does. They're still the student athletes. They're still putting in the homework. They're still keeping up their grades, and they're still going to the pool every night and getting reps inside the pool to cut their times down. So we recognize that just because your sport might not be as popular on the national stage, we recognize the hard work you put in, and we're not going to let that go by the wayside anymore.
We're here to highlight student athletes, and that is not specific to a certain sport. It is to highlight athletes and put them on center stage and put a spotlight on them and give them a platform to truly shine on that feels like the national stage, but is not quite as non-personal, I would say, as the national stage. And we try to really get as personal in the relationships with each and every one of these communities and each and every one of these sports too. We want to get involvement from everything all around.
That's why I'm so excited for tomorrow and being able to welcome in Mike Bailey live in the studio. And he's taken the mantle of coaching both the boys and girls programs soccer programs at Salem. Love the opportunity to talk to him about both programs, about what it's like to coach both, about what it's like soccer in the area. And we're going to talk to him tomorrow live in the studio to open up the show, actually. Him, Brian Tolnar coming on at 1. A lot of things to look forward to tomorrow as we continue with Running Point throughout the week. I'm so excited to talk soccer. We talked a little bit about it on the Olympic level earlier in this conversation. Now we're going to get to talk about more high school soccer tomorrow, and maybe some of the ways that I talked about it a little bit with West Branch's girls coach last week, but some of the ways we can get casual fans more interested in the high school games, because they watch Olympic soccer and then they go to a high school game and say, this isn't even close to the level that I'm trying to get interested in the Olympic. But some ways to really cater to the casual soccer fan. Really excited to get Mike's take on that tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be look for a good interview too, and just really get in the mind a little bit of a guy that now has a lot on his plate, coaching two completely different teams. I mean, same sport, but two completely different teams. And curious to see if he's going to try to instill the same culture for both a boys and a girls team. It's going to be interesting. A lot of interesting questions to ask him tomorrow for sure.
Coach Bailey is going to be like the guy at Thanksgiving that's like, I want that, I want that, I want that. Give me some of that. Yeah, that too. Yeah, oh, good. Yeah,
like the crazy thing is, he has
they carry their plate to the table, and they're like, if they move one little inch, it's going to all spill out because they're so overloaded. That's Coach Bailey right now, probably.
He's got this unique opportunity too, where he can do the same scheme, same culture, and coach the same way for both teams, and see if it's players that receive well to it, or he could do completely different schemes and try two completely different things. I mean, unlikely that he could, but I mean, you have the freedom to do so now. And I mean, there's a lot of questions to ask and see if there is any differences that he plans to do coaching wise between the teams.
And he didn't go into details about it, but he's like, this is something they're doing at Salem. It's unique to have the sports that are girls and boys be tri-coached, whatever. I mean, we're going to ask about him what the details are, but there is something brewing at Salem that he calls very unique with the sports that are both split into boys and girls. So we're gonna find out what's going on at Salem with their coaches and their coaching staffs, and how unique it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be a great interview tomorrow. Look forward to talking with Coach tomorrow.
Like I said, tomorrow we'll also preview the Steel Valley Football Conference as we continue our football previews on Running Point, and a lot of teams to be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, Youngstown schools are going to be fun to look at too, and a lot of teams that we talked about in the NE8 today that looking to make that jump. There's a few teams in the Steel Valley that I'm looking to make a big jump for this upcoming season too, and looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into it and talking a little bit more about the Steel Valley teams.
Well, when you talk about the Steel Valley, I mean, everyone's kind of comments about them is this: I'm so glad it's back. I'm so glad that this matchup is happening again. I'm so glad that we see Fitch and Cheney again, and we see Cheney and Ursuline again. Matchups that people have been longing for so long are finally back in the area, and that's one of the big draws that the new Steel Valley has.
And I mean, it's rough and tough in football of the old Youngstown culture that it was always built up with the Steel Valley, and that kind of culture is coming back too with the conference. And I mean, couldn't be more excited that Cheney is back as a football program, and excited to talk a little bit about them as well as the rest of the Steel Valley a little bit tomorrow on Running Point.
All right, so before we take our last break, there's one thing that we have to talk about. We talked about it before the show went live, about the two teams that are officially now, it's official, joining the SEC, Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma let some things leak about maybe a reason why they were not too happy with the Big 12, and they said, we didn't like the scheduled kickoff times at 11 Central to fit into the big noon kickoff on Fox. And I looked at that, and I'm scratching my head like, there are quite a few noon kickoffs on the SEC that you're gonna be in, and it's still gonna be 11 Central for you. Don't know how much of a change that is going from the Big 12 to the SEC, but apparently they thought that it was more opportunity to have quote unquote better scheduled kickoff times for them. So what do you think about Oklahoma's gripe about kickoff times?
I think Oklahoma is just making any sort of excuse that they can for jumping ship to the SEC, because honestly, it's a 1 hour difference. It's not like it's a 4 hour difference. It's a 1 hour difference in time. I understand how important time is, but come on now. A 1 hour difference in sleep is not going to be that much. You could go to bed an hour earlier. It doesn't really mess with your schedule all that much, kicking off at 11 as opposed to 12 o'clock.
I think you have a better chance trying to get the Big 12 to change their kickoff time than trying to, because you played a lot of central time zone teams in the Big 12. Now in the SEC, almost all the teams minus Missouri, Alabama, and LSU, I believe, are the only 3 teams that are central time zone other than Oklahoma and Texas now. So now you have to convince a lot more teams to try to cater to the central time zone, when back in the Big 12, a lot of those teams were in the central time zone anyway, probably had the same gripe, if it even is a gripe. They games were getting kicked off at 11 instead of noon for them.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I just think it's just trying to make an excuse for jumping ship. I mean, I can't believe that is
the Oklahoma
major reason.
The Oklahoma guys, we got to come up with something that's a rational reason why we're leaving. We can't say because the Big 12 sucks. We just can't say it.
Yeah.
Well, we have to kick off at 11. That kind of sucks. Okay, let's go with that. We're so mad we have to get, that I feel like that's the way the conversation went a little bit. Like, we have to find a reason. I guess kicking off at 11 kind of sucks. Well, let's go with that. Okay, that's beautiful.
They took the most minor inconvenience that they could find and exploited it all the way to leaving a whole conference.
Now the Oklahoma Sooners are now the Karens of college football.
They basically are after that point, because you just took the most minor inconvenience and just ditched for it. I mean, come on now. Like, you can at least think of a better excuse. I mean, you could just, what is wrong though with saying you want to play tougher competition? I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with Oklahoma flat out saying we want to play tougher competition. We're looking to have a tougher schedule or a tougher conference schedule.
Apparently that will hurt people's feelings.
I don't know who you're gonna.
We can't hurt.
You should be happy if you're in the Big 12 because you just got rid of the 2 toughest competitions now. I mean, now there's a chance for you. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Iowa State wants the conversation about that because Iowa State's a big dog in the Big 12 now.
I mean, they basically can be now.
Now the SEC is going to be calling Oklahoma Karen, and we're going to see a lot of gifts with Karens in Oklahoma wearing Oklahoma shirts, I think.
Yeah, I mean, especially too. I mean, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with just saying you want to play tougher competition. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, I think it's blatant that that's what it is, but I don't know why they're dancing around it and not saying what it actually is. They should just flat out say they want to play tougher competition.
They just come to the Big 12, be like, hey guys, you don't want us here because we're kicking your butts. We don't want to keep kicking your butts. Let's just move on.
Yeah. Would you rather us take all your players and play somebody else or play you?
We will. We'll take all your players gladly.
Yeah. We'll take your players and then play somebody else instead of playing you, because we know we're going to still take your players at the end of the day. I mean, college football, how it works, man.
You know what else
money into the mix.
What else it's done that I'm already tired of? So many reports that this team is talking to this conference, and it's like, that Penn State's not talking to the MAC. So if you see a report, and I saw one that was trying to seriously say that there were some Big Ten schools that were looking to go drop into a conference tier that's lower than the Big Ten, and I'm thinking, there is no way Purdue would go to the MAC. Shut up.
I'm so sick of those reports, and then couple that with the reports of all these players
that are believing it. People are believing these reports that are obviously stupid.
Yeah. But I mean, on top of the reports too that I'm seeing that are actual real reports of just players that are accepting money, or is this player leaving high school early, or is this player transferring to make more money here at this college? And it's like, already it's like you lifted that gate and it's just flooded with all those news articles.
You know what
now.
I'm seeing a lot of? I'm seeing a lot of athletes opening up their online stores and having their own kind of branded merchandise, which means graphic designers in the country are making bank because all of a sudden all these athletes need logos. I would have loved to be a graphic designer right now.
Oh my God, an independent one too that's just getting signed. Especially some of these athletes that might not know exactly how much a graphic design costs, and you could upcharge. Geez, oh man.
Well,
but like I said, man, you hand a kid at $16,000, $17,000, $15,000, they don't think about the long-term consequences of signing that contract and accepting those deals and everything. It's going to be – it immediately muddied the waters when they lifted the gate because at the end of the day, NCAA was doing it to make money for themselves, and they were going to make a lot more than anything else.
And what's crazy about these online stores is your brand cannot have the team that you play for on it.
That's
like you can't make like an Oklahoma t-shirt yourself that has the Oklahoma brand on it and then your logo.
But you know who can?
Oklahoma. Oklahoma can.
Oklahoma can. Oklahoma can now throw your name on the back of the jersey and not just your number and sell that to fans. And fans are going to buy it because your name's on it now.
At least they have to give you a cut of that revenue.
Yeah, that is nice that they have to get a cut, but they're going to make a lot more money now that the names are going to be on the back of jerseys and not just the numbers. So, I mean, yeah, Oklahoma will gladly take their check.
Interesting question. I don't know if I would spend $120 on a college player's jersey because no matter what, they're gone in 4 years. Or if they're just now like Trevor Lawrence started since he was a freshman. But some of these other quarterbacks that come in, like Justin Fields, he came in, he only had 2 years at Ohio State. And then he's gone, and it's like, does that jersey mean as much to you because he doesn't play for your team anymore? I mean, I don't know. I don't like having jerseys that are, even though I'm wearing a throwback, I don't like having jerseys of my favorite team. I don't like having Chiefs jerseys of players that aren't there anymore. I don't wear them as much unless they're legacy players like Derek Thomas. But I don't know if I'd spend $120 on a jersey for college because the player's name was on the back when I know that player, unless he's a legacy player, is going to be gone in 2 years.
I've never been big into buying jerseys anyway, but I tell you, DJ's probably the best one to ask about how he would feel about that. He's the big DJ man. DJ's the big t-shirt man or jersey man, rather. And
obviously, your specialty players, you're going to want a Trevor Lawrence jersey because he's he's historic for Clemson or whatever. But are you going to buy a Clemson receivers jersey because you just like Clemson and because he's
might not knowing that the player gets a cut of it. You might see those players' jerseys. If they do it for the whole team, you might see it for the players that aren't as prevalent, like your offensive linemen or the guys that might not be making it to the next level that are just there for the college. That might be nice too to see them get a little bit of a revenue jump, but we know that it's not going to be the smaller players that are going to be making the money. It's going to be the big name players that are already going to be making big money once they make it to the NFL.
What I like, and one of the other things I like about NIL is now the players don't have to worry about their YouTube channels or their Twitches. So many players have already started these pay $50 and you can play me in Madden or whatever.
Yeah.
Simple things like that I think are a home run for college athletes.
There were very good aspects to it. I mean, you have to look at the pros and cons, and there were pros to it, and it does open up a lot more ways of making money for the college athlete that were very restricted. And I'm not saying the way it was before was 100% squeaky clean, because they were very restricted in ways they can make income if they were already an athlete with the college. So, I mean, it's nice that they're able to make income in little ways like that, but you opened up a much bigger gate, and Pandora's box has now been opened, and everything is out in the open.
Retrospect, was there a way to kind of fix some of those problems but not open the gates completely? I don't know.
I don't think
know if there was a legitimate way. I think
because you need an NCAA to allow it in the end, and NCAA is in control of the gates, and they aren't letting you get yours without them getting theirs. So they were opening the gates regardless.
None of us are naive enough to think that the NCAA lost this battle. They just conceded the win because they know what they're doing, and they have a room full of lawyers that probably told them, hey, let's just let them go and make their own mistakes. And then when they do, we're going to be the ones that are going to come in and play almost hero and be like, okay, you messed up big time. So now we're going to do things our way because we've already proven your way doesn't work.
NCAA won big time under the illusion that the players are the big winners out of this whole ordeal, and that's just not the case.
The NCAA are the biggest possums in history.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you're like I said, I give it a year. Over under a year is what the betting line for Skittles should be. Over under a year before you start seeing these lawsuits between players and colleges and players and companies and sponsorships and things that they signed on for that's preventing them to go forward and into pros, or keeping them in the colleges or keeping them in high schools or whatever. It's only a matter of time.
Bravo, keeping with the Skittles. We only bet Skittles at YSN.
Yeah, 100%. Only Skittles.
Tasting the rainbow. We will take our last break of the day, come back to wrap this one up. Don't go anywhere on ysnlive.com. Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
At Hubbard Chevrolet, Hubbard can help you get the financing you need, regardless of your situation. I'm Tony Page, and I've helped thousands of customers in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania buy a vehicle. Bad credit, no problem. I can get you approved for a low-interest loan and maybe even a low-payment lease on a new car at the #1 Chevy dealership in Trumbull County for 3 years in a row. Visit HubbardChevy.com to get pre-approved or come see me, Tony Page, to get a new vehicle today. Remember, folks, Hubbard can help.
When looking for home design inspiration, don't just be inspired, be Baird inspired. Whether new or remodeling, Baird Brothers has the latest trends like shiplap to refresh your home. Go from inspiration to installation with our wide selection of in-stock American hardwoods. From the rustic charm of antique oak to the warmth of traditional cherry, Baird Brothers has what you need to make your home inspiring. Baird Brothers, our family's heritage, your family's home.
When Mother Nature starts flexing her muscles, make sure you're prepared for comfort. For over a decade, NDC Heating and Cooling has been sending their team of experienced, certified, and knowledgeable technicians to service the area. NDC services all makes and models and carries a wide selection of furnaces, air conditioners, and indoor air quality products. To schedule an appointment, call 330-457-2562. That's 330-457-2562. For all your residential and commercial heating and cooling needs in Columbiana or Mahoning counties, call NDC Heating and Cooling in New Waterford, Ohio, where our thermostat is always set on quality.
At Greenwood Chevrolet, shop with confidence knowing we're ready to go the extra mile for you. With the largest selection of used vehicles in the Valley, backed by the Greenwood Advantage Warranty. Every one of our vehicles has undergone our own 126-point inspection, so it passes the most important inspection, yours. No other dealership has the extra inventory, gives you extra for your trade, and goes the extra mile for you. Only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Welcome back to a Tuesday edition of Running Point as we wrap this baby up. Get ready for the Power Hour from 3 to 4 with DJ and the boys. We want to say a special thank you to Coach Stephen Moore, head coach of the Jackson Milton volleyball team, for joining us today. Tomorrow on the show, Mike Bailey in the studio, the head coach of the boys and girls soccer program at Salem, and Brian Tolnar at 1 o'clock, the golf guru from Mill Creek Park, will be joining us, along with a preview of the Steel Valley football conferences or things to look forward to on tomorrow's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Anthony Hartwig alongside Ty Bartell. This has been a Tuesday edition of Running Point brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.